I grew up reading about ultra marathons, 100-mile races. Even when I was lifting, I just found it fascinating. This is so interesting, these 100-mile races in the mountains. It sounds terrible. So I always wanted to do one. It was like a bucket list thing. I look back on what I accomplished or the lifts I hit, how big I was, and it doesn't feel real. When I was at my peak, as far as lifting, I'm like, I can't even imagine now. I don't know what 800 pounds feels like in my hands. And I used to rep that for 5. It's just crazy.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back again with Pete Rubish. He was on 173 and 204. We have some catching up to do. So where I'm going to jump off right here is going to the ER for energy drinks.
Oh my goodness, yes. That was an interesting experience. I'm quite the fan of energy drinks, and I'm not even going to say what specific brand it was or anything, but I've been drinking them for years, and I was actually, this probably was the first bad idea here. So I'd been having them before my runs, right? So I'd go for like a 6-7 mile run, and I had them beforehand, and this particular day I had that one. I was about midway through the run, and my heart just started going crazy. So
just from one?
Yes, just 200 milligrams of caffeine. Heart palpitations were going wild. I couldn't bring my heart rate down. I stopped to walk for about 10, 15 minutes, and it was just still jackhammering. And at that point, I'm like, all right, this is not good. So I didn't have my phone on me or anything, so I just walked into like one of the local businesses and borrowed somebody's phone, called my wife up. Of course, she didn't answer because she's like, I don't know whose number that was. And I had the guy drive me back to the gym, and then I went to the ER. And actually, when I got right back to the gym, I took a beta blocker because I keep some of that stuff around. Just you never know, metoprolol, and that brought it down pretty good. But I went to the ER. Everything for the most part checked out. There wasn't anything weird. The doctor just kept telling me, he's like, stay away from energy drinks, as I have one right in front of me now. But and I've had plenty of no issues with like rain or anything, Ghost, but just this particular one was it set some things in motion. I don't know what the ingredients were, but it was just 200 milligrams of caffeine. You wouldn't think anything of it. So now I try to wait till after the run to have the drink.
Yeah.
So was that the first time you tried that brand, or had you been drinking it for a while and it was fine? And
yeah, I'd been drinking it for a while, and there weren't really any real issues too often, but just sometimes I'd feel like even in the evening I was having slight heart palpitations. So the EKG checked out, everything was fine, but that scared me a little bit, and that's when the doctor gave the old lecture. He's like, you got to stick to coffee, just have coffee, don't go crazy with anything. And nothing really came of it, but that freaked me out pretty good. I feel like I'm more in tune to my health now, being off everything, off PEDs for the last almost 5 years, where I'm probably more of a hypochondriac. I get more anxiety than I did on cycle. Like back then, never thought anything of health, never was concerned, and now it's like, I'm like, this was legitimate. I was having heart palpitations, but at the same time, I definitely have a lot more health anxiety now. Like it's a thing where no matter how healthy I get at this point, I'm always concerned, like, am I going to have a heart attack, cancer, that sort of thing. And it's one of those things that messes with me.
That's kind of crazy because when you're on shit, the PEDs and all that, it's so inverse, of anybody else we'd ever speak to, because when they're on, they're like, man, I need to really make sure my health doesn't go haywire, where I can kind of relate to what you're saying. Because if you're on like big doses, it's like, fuck my health.
Yeah.
It's already gone.
Yeah. Well,
I already jumped off the bridge. So who cares? Where when you're not, then everything becomes on the radar, because that can no longer be the reason why. You know what I'm saying? So if you're on a whole bunch of stuff and you go into AFib or you have heart palpitations, it's like, oh, it's just the trend.
Yes, exactly.
Where now if that all happens, it's like, oh, wait, I'm going to die. Because there's nothing to point to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I never had any anxiety on cycle. Like, I never worried about it. I rarely got blood work because it was like you said, you didn't want to know. I don't want to know what it is. We know it's terrible. Why would I want to see? And I kind of wish I had the data now to check that, but being off, you're like hyper aware of every little thing, and you're constantly worrying about, at least for me, it's made it so much worse as far as that goes, which could be a good thing, keep you around longer, but never worried about it at all in my 20s, being on cycle.
Do you think part of it now might be that you feel like you have more to lose now? Like you're saying about how good you feel now, right? Like, whereas maybe at your prime in powerlifting, not feeling great is kind of par for the course or whatever it might be. So do you feel like now you've gotten to this level where like day to day you feel good and you're like, man, I don't want to give this up? Do you think that could be part of it?
Yes, I think part of it too is maturing with age, just being in my 30s now. Life doesn't seem like it's going to go on forever anymore. Like, you don't feel invincible. I was talking about that earlier off camera, where it's like I felt invincible in my 20s. It felt like it was going to continue going. The strength gains were going to keep coming. You could do no wrong. You could put any weight on the bar. You could get away with so many more things, and everything was fine. And now I'll be 34 in August, and there's no longer that sense of just invincibility. It's like, it's not there. You've had little things go wrong with your health, as far as mine, and this wasn't necessarily anything partially my own doing. That's a whole nother story, kidney stones and things like that. But there's little things that have come up. The back pain that we talked about, like back pain for the last 8 years, stuff that wasn't there before. So you're aware your body's not going to be rolling forever, and there's consequences. And that makes you reevaluate everything, especially with your family and how long do you want to be around, that sort of thing.
Well, you mentioned the kidney stone surgery. So first off, plural, right? So that was the one thing I noticed there. And you put 24 millimeters? Was the kidney stone?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I looked this up, I was like, that to me, that sounds huge. So I looked at him and he was like, oh, anything above 6 is carried as large, apparently. So 24 millimeters, you must have been growing that thing for a while right there.
Yes, I don't know. It was rough, it was probably 3 years or so, because I did have this story goes back a ways. So 2020, I believe it was, I started, December 2020, I started peeing blood. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what is this about? You start to think something's seriously wrong. You start to think cancer. That's the first place your brain goes. And I kind of ignored it, which you shouldn't, for about 5-6 months. And it was just happening intermittently off and on. Went in, finally got it checked out, got a CT scan. And he's just like, all right, there's 3 kidney stones. They're about 2-3 millimeter, which is nothing. I don't worry about that. It's not painful at all. You just pee blood sometimes, where this one particular one was. And so that kind of went on off and on for a period of years even. And I was adamant about checking my kidney functions multiple times to be sure there wasn't like kidney damage going on from this.
So when you had them first checked and they were 2 to 3, was there a bigger one there too?
No, there was just those 3 small ones.
All right, then it grew.
Apparently.
Well, yeah.
So I got like cystatin C checked, creatinine. Even this last time around, I just checked albumin to creatinine ratio. Those are kind of some standard kidney, biomarkers that a nephrologist might check or might not. But, and then basically, so this was, let me think back, November of 2023. I just finished my first half marathon, and I started getting this like stomach pain, and right in the lower left abdominal region, I would get super nauseous. It'd get quite painful. And it happened a couple times. I'm like, all right, maybe there's some kind of gluten intolerance or something of that nature going on. So I started reading about that and going down that rabbit hole. And then the new year came around, and about February, it started getting much worse. And I'm running a lot at this point. So that's definitely not helping as far as being dehydrated. So I'd get done with these runs, and I'd be on the floor for 3 hours, writhing in pain, like just on the floor in the back of the gym, because I literally couldn't sit up without just being doubled over in excruciating pain. And it got to the point it was 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 pain, just the worst pain I'd felt. And so I kept thinking, I'm eating something that's triggering this. There's some kind of allergy, gluten intolerance, whatever. Then I started thinking, is it diverticulitis? It's in the lower left abdomen. That's where that would stem from. And I finally went in when it became unbearable at that point. Like I couldn't even run without excruciating pain every time. So I went in.
Was that the thing that made you finally go in, out of curiosity? Was when you had to stop running?
Yeah, I was still running through it. It would almost come on after, just as soon as you're done and you settle in, 30 minutes later, you're in agony.
I'm curious because you get your blood work regularly done, so you're going to see blood in the urine, right?
Yes.
I have 2 or 3 small ones, right?
Yep.
So there's blood in the urine, so it's always going to be in the urine, right? And so when they were checking you, is there a marker to be able to show how much without having to get another scan?
Yeah, there's not. So kidney stones aren't necessarily going to show up on blood work. That's the crazy thing. Like if you had a uric acid stone, you would check uric acid. But
well, it will show blood in the urine.
Yeah, you can check on a what do we call it? I'm spacing right now.
Yeah. Well, because that's
urinalysis.
Yeah. Then I had the scan, right?
Yes.
And then after the scan, it's like, well, here's probably why you have blood in the urine, right? And it's not like I'm peeing straight red blood, but it's basically you can't see it. But it's like, so of course I'm probably doing what you were doing, going down the rabbit hole. Like, how do I get this shit out of here? You know, and they're like, well, you come back in a year, we'll scan it, see what the size is, you know, or it's just going to grow and you're going to pass it and have fun with that, you know? And so you had the scan done, but did they have you come back to do any other scans, or did you just say, fuck it and just wait till it got that big?
Well, so basically there were no scans done after that. They wanted me to follow up with the urologist initially in 2021. And of course I'm like, yeah, it's nothing, 2-3 millimeter, who cares? So this fast forward to 2024 is when this got out of hand. And I went in March, end of March, went in, got the CT scan after an X-ray urinalysis, because I was trying to figure out what's going on. I wanted to see if it was diverticulitis or whatever. So they found the kidney stone, 24 millimeter, significant uptick from like 2 to 3.
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem. And really they were like, you know, this is pretty much the biggest one we've ever seen. So I had knew a little bit about like lithotripsy. I was hoping I could get done where they just kind of put you under and break it up with shock waves. But they're like, this is too big. We have to go full and operate. And just thinking about the logistics of that makes me a little nervous, because, I mean, there's no good place to go in. They're going straight up to the urethra. So you like are thinking about the logistics, like how does that work?
Yeah.
Some things are better off not.
Yeah.
No, and I didn't. He told me, he's like, this is what we have to do. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But at that point, you're in so much pain, you're willing to do anything. You're like, get it out. Like, get it out. I don't even care. So there was 2 surgeries that ensued after that, where the first one, they put you under, you come to, obviously, and you're like, all right, is it out? And they're like, no, we couldn't get it out. It's too big. We have to go on next week again.
Oh,
and
man.
You're like, oh my gosh. So they put a stent in, and this gets even more fun. The stent is massive. It's a foot-long stent up your urethra into your kidney.
Wow.
Like that's just hanging out in there. And it's just, and they had to put the biggest one in because of the size of the stone. So they have to, because they couldn't access. It's the ureter is like 2-3 millimeter. You're trying to get 24 out. How does that, the math doesn't add up. So they're trying to get in there with like a laser and break this down. And they couldn't get through. So they're like, we have to let the stent like enlarge things for a little while. Most painful thing ever. Every time you have to pee, I was biting down on like a washcloth, just in agony, just biting on it. Like, cause I was going to like basically yell every time I had to pee, because it was that excruciating. It's like peeing razor blades, straight up. That was excruciating. So that went on for a week. Now, actually, I was training at the time for that 100-mile race. So I was like, I can't stop running. I got to keep running with this stent in. So I was out on these runs, and I'd have to pee every 5 minutes because the stent's like moving around in your bladder. So I was out in the middle of the woods or whatever on the trail run, and I'm peed like 30, 40 times, I believe I counted. And every time you're peeing straight blood. That's the other part. So this whole thing is just messed up. It's not smart. It was a terrible idea. But I kept trying to train, and that was in there for a week. Then they go in a week later, they do it again, and that's when they finally laser it down, and they put a different stent in. This one's a smaller one, so much more comfortable, honestly. Like, you're like, I can live with this. I can pee, and it doesn't kill me. And so at that point, I was like, all right, I'll just give it a week off of running. We'll come back when this is all said and done. So 2 weeks with stents in, 2 surgeries. They're about 2 hours each. They laser it down the second time into little bits. And basically at that point, then in the next couple of days that follow the surgery, you're like peeing out the particles. And I got quite a bit out. It was just crazy because this is the remnants of the 24 millimeter. So that part, when you're peeing it out, it's not painful at all. Doesn't hurt at all. Not bad. It's the stent, and it's the when the kidney stone is in there itself that is painful. But then you have to go back and they have to get the stent out, and you're awake.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
So it's like removing the catheter.
It's just insult to injury.
I get that.
Well, oh my gosh, guys, it's like a minute, but look up at the ceiling and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And you're wide awake. And I never want to have to go through that again. And which I don't know. I think I have one over here somewhere. Because they cleared out the left side, but I still have the right side. So I have to see what's going on in there soon. But then the night after they take the stent out, it's called like renal colic. And it's the worst kidney pain you will ever have. That might have been the most painful part of the whole thing. So the stent's out. You're like, all right, back to normal. And then about 4 hours after they take the stent out, your kidney starts spasming. And like so my left kidney was spasming all night. Not all night. It was like 3-4 hours. And it was excruciating. Like I was ready to climb the walls. Like it was that bad. I was just, again, writhing in pain on the couch. And all I had was, I forget what it's called even. It's, what pain med is that? They actually started using it in powerlifting. A lot of powerlifters use it. Toradol, I believe. Yeah. And Toradol was all I had, and it helped a little. It made it where you could live, but it wasn't fun. So that whole experience was miserable. And since then, I've started making sure I'm not eating oxalates and things like that, because it's a calcium oxalate stone. 80% of kidney stones are calcium oxalate, which means you can't break them down. Like you can't. You're either going to pee it out at some point if it's small enough, or you just don't want it to grow. And it grows with eating more oxalates, which is like chocolate, potatoes, things like that. There's a couple of foods. Spinach is the worst, and I don't like it anyway, so that's fine. But this thing had been growing for a few years, obviously, and that was like a health thing where you're like, all right, I'm not invincible. I have to have these surgeries, and this sucks, and it was one of those wake-up call things. True. So not necessarily, I think it was all the potato chips I'd been eating for years. Like I would pound a whole family-sized bag every day.
Oh, wow.
Because you're running like 10 miles. You're like, whatever. You can eat anything, and it's still like that a little bit, but that's a ton of oxalates, and I think that built it up, and then here we are. So not fun at all.
So what have you replaced the potato chips now then to avoid a repeat of this wonderful event?
Yes, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm health conscious, but I like to eat. Everybody pretty much knows this who knows me. I don't eat necessarily the cleanest, so I'm all about some baked goods, apple fritters, donuts, that sort of stuff. That's just what I love to eat. And with all the running, I can get away with that. I know it's not ideal. It shows up on blood work in the sense it'll raise my LDL and ApoB and that sort of stuff. But for the most part, the blood work's still excellent. And that's my guilty pleasure. That's my addiction, I say, like truly.
How's the increase in the running for the ultras and stuff like that impacted, say, your testosterone levels?
It drops it, I'd say, like 100 points. So the highest, it got to a point, guys, I stopped checking testosterone recently because I've checked it probably a dozen times since I came off. It never changes. I'm like, what's the point anymore? It's not going to change my approach. I've tried all the natural testosterone boosters, which I think a lot of them are overhyped. I think the one that mainly works is Vedosia agrestis. I saw a decent bump with that of 100 points. But I've tried the Boron, the Tonkat Ali's, all that. really got nothing out of it, even at high doses. So it's always about 420-ish nanograms per deciliter, which I feel great. I kind of like it. I like not having the burden of like what I felt before with a higher libido, and then you're distracted all the time and things of that nature. So I don't mind being here. Obviously, it's a lot harder to get stronger. Like, there's no doubt when my testosterone was higher, it was even, let's say, up around 1,000. It's so much easier to get stronger.
Are you feeling like you're not the man you're supposed to be? Low confidence, negative thoughts polluting your brain. That's me. I get it. I've been dealing with messed up hormones most of my life. A couple of years I hooked up with Merrick Health, and it was one of the best things that I ever did. They're a health optimization platform that does advanced lab works and goes deeper than probably what you've ever seen before. What you'll get with Merrick Health is they have guided optimization and the self-service diagnosis. I personally have been using the guided optimization for the whole time I've been with him. Dry is my health coach. He does an amazing job. The second route that they have is the self-service diagnostics. This is just a DIY with your own health journey. You just head over to Merrick Health, pick the panel, and they'll send you the report. You just kind of go from there. Either way, I highly recommend them, and you can get 10% off right now. Just head over to merrickhealth.com and use the code TABLETALK at checkout.
And that was a huge part of my identity. So it's hard to live with that sense of it. But I really just don't check it anymore. It's one of those things where I'm like, it is where it is, and it's not going to change much. Because most of your
that 400 range is fine.
Yes.
You know, it's when it's like 5. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's what I've seen with a lot of people that use over a long period of time is when they get it checked, if they're go off their TRT or whatever it is, it goes down to like 50.
Yes.
You know, it's like, well, that's why you feel like shit. But they want it back at 1,000. You know, where right around 400 to 600 is probably a good sweet spot if they're not concerned about getting stronger. You know what I'm saying? Because it will have that mitigating effect. You know, I don't want to say negative because does it really matter with what you're doing now? You know, how strong you actually are?
Yeah, I still want to be as strong as possible, but it's something I've had to, and really what people don't understand, and I don't think I've ever put this way, but it came to me the other day. I'm like, this explains it. It's not even that running is my first choice right now or anything. And I'm still lifting 3 days a week and trying to push heavy. I felt a sense of loss. I felt a sense of a loss of identity. As far as and it's not attributed to coming off everything. It's more been like the back pain. You guys know, like, my passion for much of my life was lifting. It has been lifting. It still is. And deadlifts in particular, that was always my calling card. That's what everyone knew me for. That's what I loved the most. So when you get this back pain that comes in from all these herniated discs and such, and you can't deadlift like you have before, you can't push it, you're always battling this pain, you feel lost. You're like, I want to do that. I want to max out on deadlift. I still feel very confident. If the back wasn't so jacked up, I'd still be in the 7s. I wouldn't be maybe above 750, but I feel like I'd be in the 7s. And I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that more than running. But it hasn't been in the cards in the same way. So we talked about, you always have something you want to strive for. That we're goal-oriented individuals. That's how we've been our whole lives. So I just kind of segued that into races to give me an outlet, because I felt so down about not being able to push deadlift anymore. And I can still push bench, but that's been hard to deal with. It's been the back pain more than coming off the PEDs.
Well, it's a tricky thing because when it gets ingrained as your identity for so long, right? You kind of lose sight of that's what you do. It's not who you are.
Yes.
Right. So having to kind of go through that whole process is a giant reminder that that's not who I am. You know, it's what I did or what I do. You know, then you got to figure out who the fuck you are, which becomes what people would call that identity crisis, right? You can try to replace it with bodybuilding, running, or whatever it is, but that still isn't who you are. You see where I'm going?
Yes. And that's the hard part. Like, I know, and I've had to do a lot of the deep diving, like, who am I? What do I want in life? What am I thankful for? What am I grateful for? What do I want my life to look at? And step back and look at the family and taking care of them more so than your own pursuits. Like, that's something I've had to pivot a little bit more towards. And then as far as other goals, like as far as coaching, like what you want to do with your athletes, that sort of thing, their goals, focusing on that instead. So it's easy though when all the praise and all the attention comes from something you're doing that you're fairly good at, and that's what you've known for the last decade, and then it's like it's taken away as quickly as it came. And you're going back to when you're 25 and you feel like the ride's going to keep going forever. You feel like you're invincible. You just keep putting weight on the bar. You just keep getting stronger. There's no injuries. There's not any setbacks. It's just a smooth progression, but it fades quick. I've seen a lot of people come and go from the sport for that reason. So you have to realize there is more to life. It's hard to do though. Like, I'm sure you guys know, putting in days of training where you're literally at the gym for 5-6 hours and you're pushing all out every session. It's not, that's what I knew. That's what I grew up on. I grew up doing that. So to be like, oh, it hurts to deadlift 225 now it's extremely frustrating. It was one of those things.
Yeah. I mean, that's a cool segue into this. I've got a whole section here on like you reinventing yourself, basically. So your transformation, I've kind of got summed up here as 15-year-old runner, 140, 150 pounds, up to 260 in your 20s. And forgive me if I get these wrong. Squat 772, bench 485, deadlift 920.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And then should we say back down to now 33 years old, floating between 200 and 220, right?
Yes, sir.
Running your second ever marathon, 3 hours 19. That's quite a full circle, although you're definitely a better runner now than you were a teenager.
Yes.
So for those who are maybe at similar transition points, and Dave, I'm sure you've got a really cool insight on this too. Like when you're at that point where your body or your life is telling you like something needs to change, that chapter is maybe over or needs to be navigated away from, how did you deal with that? Like that kind of feeling lost or giving up part of yourself, but finding a new part of yourself?
Yeah, I remember starting to run the first day. It was like a 13:30 mile on a treadmill. I was 240, and it was after another setback with the back where it just wasn't cooperating. The pain. Every time I'd go to the deadlift, it'd feel like a waste of time because I'd do all the prehab work, all the core work, all the stretching, everything. And the pain would crop up and it'd be like 2 hours of just beating my head against the wall. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try to get in better shape, lower my blood pressure, just maybe see how this goes. And so I started getting into it like that, just running a mile or two every day on the treadmill. Hated it. I really hated it for like a year or 2 years. It was challenging and I liked the challenge of it, but the actuality of running was not fun. It just was hard and miserable. But I'd say around like 2.5 year mark, year 3 here, it's gotten a lot better where I'm really enjoying it. I'm getting into races now and it's been a positive outlet where I've seen it also have a positive effect on my health. It's the glass half full side of things is it's like the sleep apnea is gone, which was there for the entire, period of my 20s, and the high blood pressure and all that kind of stuff. And I've seen my blood work improve, insulin sensitivity, and even lipids to an extent. That stuff is all much better. So it helps justify in that regard. And it just gives me something to get better at where I haven't tapped into this world, and it's pain free. Whereas like lifting now, bench is fun. I'm still benching. I got up to like 353 at 217, 353 pound bench. That was back in September. And right now it's around like 300 pounds, starting to build it back after the race. So bench is fun. I still want to always be in that like, 300 plus 350 range in there. But deadlifts, it's just, I don't know if it's going to be in the cards to push anymore. And same with squat as far as the back is concerned. So this is just giving me another outlook, another path. because the mindset never changes. My wife has brought this up. She's like, you get so locked in on a goal, like you'll do whatever it takes for that goal. And that's my personality. And I've had to take a step back and at certain times and look at the bigger picture. Like, this can't be what my life is centered around. So I have to do it within reason. But the drive is always there. That's what made me who I was. That's what we saw, you saw in the basement days, like that was there. It was going all in on a goal. So in a sense, I'd like to be as good as I can at this within reason, without letting it affect relationships and dip into that.
See, I think that in my case, that goal strategy, that you're having something, to have that kind of like all in focus on, is the important aspect. Because if I don't have something like that, it's a problem. So you got to kind of be looking for that. But at the same time, remember that we come into this world with nothing and we're going to leave with nothing. And in between there, if you have that mindset, this is the tricky part. It's like, how long do you stay with that one thing? Because at a certain point, it will become destructive, no matter what it is, especially if you've been through it a couple times. It's like, okay, here, this is great. This is awesome. It's my identity. I'm kicking all kinds of ass. And then when you look back in hindsight, it's like, ooh, right at that point is when it really started to fuck up everything else. But I wasn't looking for what that next thing could be, because that's going to pull you away from what you're fucking doing. You get what I'm saying? So it's the fucked up part. It's like you can't get out until either therapy or some shit, I don't know, psychedelics, shit I didn't do, but you can't get out until it kicks you out. Mm-hmm. Right? Then when it kicks you out, you're like, fuck, now what? Then you got to search, for that. And you try different things, to try to find that thing you can grab onto. Like, okay, that's it. There's something I can work for. Right. And I think that's so hard because you suck at so much, because you're so good at one thing. So when you're really good at that powerlifting or that one thing, it's like, okay, fuck it, I'll try running. And then you skip down the trail for 100 yards, like, fuck this. And you forget you suck that bad at one point at the lifting too. But you also know, because you've been through this path, this, just to get to where I'd want to be competitive, this is going to take like 5 fucking years. Do I really want to do this? That's the tricky part. That's the navigation of like, is this going to be it, or is it something else? Maybe you go to a gun range and you fucking can't hit the target. You're like, this sucks. Do I really want to spend 5 years on this? Because you're looking for something that you can have, you know what I'm saying? That you can have that with. And family's important. All these other things are important. You can balance Christ, family, all these other things, but there's still that one thing that certain people have to have, to be in there. And if you don't have it, or if you stay with it too long, say you just would have said, fuck it, and just kept powerlifting over it, think of how fucked up you really would be. Mm. And so the running's kind of that way now. It's like you're getting into that, you're going to get in this really cool bubble, and it could be 10 years, who knows when it's going to be, but then it's going to be like, man, this is fucking me all up. And then it's like, what's the next thing?
Do you think an important, for you both here, do you think an important factor though with feeling driven in that new endeavor is having a goal to aim at? Like you mentioned, the running at first, take it or leave it, not great, until you started doing events. And then all of a sudden there's this path that you have to be on your A game on this one day, right? Similar to how you would a competition. Dave, I know like your training cycle right now is like you have a certain squat goal. Mm-hmm. And if that wasn't there, what would happen to your training cycle? Do you think, so a big part of it is not just finding what doesn't make all these sacrifices and hinder you, but also making sure you attach some kind of goal to it. Otherwise, you are just going to kind of be flailing around with this new endeavor, whatever it is.
I would say, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, it has to be some type of anchored goal, but it has to be an anchored goal that you have more control of than you would say something else. Like, we have a certain degree of control over health, but not so much control that my health is going to be the number one overall goal. Like, longevity is kind of like a stupid fucking goal, right? You can do that, then you're going to get cancer out of fucking nowhere or whatever. It's not a bad thing, but for me, that doesn't have enough bite that I have control over that. The business doesn't have enough bite that I have control over it because there's so many factors that are out of your control. Where with running time, you know, or a race or something like that, or squatting a weight at a certain body weight, may or may not happen, but I have way more control over the outcome than the other things.
Yeah, I think with me, there has to be a specific thing I'm working towards, like a race. If I were just going out and running, I'm like, what am I doing? So in that sense, like running just for the sake of like trying to be healthy, that's all well and good. And obviously we want to be as healthy as possible and live a fairly long time. But I'm in agreement where it's like I need a race. I need something that, like, this is the deadline. It puts pressure on you. It sharpens you. That's what brings out the best. And I think, and it is a thing where you can get so encompassed in a goal, it can get destructive. That's 100%. And powerlifting was that way, when I was on trend and such, and I was out of control, wasn't controlling my emotions well on it and that sort of thing. And it was messing up relationships and priorities, and everything was going by the wayside. And I do think about, like, where would I be if I kept down that road? Who knows? Could be really bad. And that's part of the reason, like, I tried the one ultra, and it was getting to that point. It was getting to where it's like, this is going to be a serious problem on family, on time. I can't be doing these ultras. This is ridiculous. Like, I wanted to do this 100-mile race. That's a whole nother story. Didn't even finish it. Got 66 miles in, learned a lot. But the training was so extensive that I remember one week it was like 16 hours of running. And it just started getting like, you'll be like, all right, I'll see you in 8 hours. Like, you go for a long run. It's like, I'll be back in 8 hours. It doesn't work. Not if you have a family and such. And I would always try to overlap these periods with when my daughter was napping and justify things. But it got to where I'm like, I could see if you're always training for an ultra or something of that nature, it's going to become unhealthy, the time commitment, that sort of thing. And that's where I pivoted back to marathons. I'm like, I can kind of do this where it's not really interfering with family time. I'm not gone forever. And it's not in that regard. So for me, the marathon's like the perfect distance where maybe at the end of a prep, you have some longer runs where your longest run is 3 hours, but that's only maybe, let's say, 4 times you're doing that. And the rest of the time, it's like you might be an hour, might be hour and a half, and that's about it. And I can do that when I put my daughter down for a nap. She's 3 now. So that's a lot more sustainable. But I'm in agreement where it can get out of hand. And I had to really step back and look at that. The ultra definitely put a little friction in things where it's like you're gone for so long. It's so encompassing. Everything revolves around it because it's such a big goal. And it can get a little dangerous where you're sliding back down that path, like with powerlifting, where it's your whole life.
Had you not done that with powerlifting, do you think you would have had the foresight to see that coming with this? The reason I ask this is a lot of people talk about how they'll go all in on something. And then when I'll talk to people who have really gone all in on something, then I ask them, are they willing to do that with something else again? The answer is usually no.
No.
Right? So I wonder if you have to go through that to be able to know this can be that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think part of it's age too. In my 20s, we've talked about this. Someone could tell you a life lesson. Like when I was doing the UPA meets and I was, 18 years old, 19 years old. And if someone, there were a lot of lifters doing geared lifting who were in their 30s at the time. And I thought they were so old and like, you're not going to listen to them. And now you're that guy. And so I think a lot of it is youth. You got to go through it. You have to learn the hard way. But any goal can get destructive. It can take over. It can. No, I wouldn't do that again. It's one of those things. I think it's good to have a goal. It's good to have an outlet, but you also have to look at the big picture. It's not everything. Nobody even cares like what you're doing. At the end of the day, people don't care necessarily about your progress, your lifts, your whatever you're doing. It's no one's worrying about it. It doesn't matter to them. So you got to ask yourself, why am I doing it? And you're doing it because maybe you love it and you love the challenge and you want to get better at something, but it can't take over your life.
When you first got back into running, was an ultra marathon even on your radar? Or is that an example of kind of the slippery slope where you're like, first off, the goal's a 10K, then it's a marathon, then it's an ultra? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it becomes more extreme in nature. Was that how it happened? Or did you get into it and think, oh, it would be cool to do something like that?
Definitely. I have an addictive personality. Like when I started PEDs, it was probably 5 months in. I'm like, let's do trend, you know? So like, I don't build up. I'm like, let's start with the biggest thing. That's how I've been. And I grew up kind of reading about ultra marathons, 100-mile races when it was super underground. Even when I was lifting, I just found it fascinating. I didn't like doing it. I was like, this is so interesting, these 100-mile races in the mountains. It sounds terrible. So I always wanted to do one. It was like a bucket list thing.
Staying hydrated is huge for training and performance. And this is why today's episode is brought to you by Element. Element gives you exactly what your body needs: 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium, 0 sugar, and no junk. Personally, I like to mix half a pack with my morning oatmeal. I'll use any of the chocolate flavors. I drink it with all my training sessions, watermelon being my favorite. Some other reasons why I use it is stable energy with no crash. It fights off fatigue and cramps, improves mental focus and clarity, helps regulate stress, and supports deeper sleep. And there's no sugar and garbage. Here's the best part. You can try it totally risk-free. Right now, Element is offering a free 8-count sample pack of its most popular flavors. With each purchase, you get 2 of each of these 4 fan favorites, perfect for finding your own favorite or sharing with a friend. Don't like it? Give it to a salty friend and Element will give you your money back. Head over to www.drinklmnt.com/table talk.
And this was one of the races in Wyoming, one of my favorite states. I was like, this is the target. We're going to go after this one. And so I didn't even start with anything really shorter. I did like the local half marathon 8 months beforehand, and then jumped into this, got up to where I was doing like 100-mile weeks, which is where we're getting into the 16-hour mark. It's just too much. And I want to start with the hardest thing, basically. And it became too much. You look back now, and in some ways, I'm glad to have given it a shot, but it can be destructive. But that's how I've always been. It's like there's no easing in. It's just 100 miles an hour, to my detriment a lot of times.
How long did it bother you that you didn't finish it?
It still bothers me.
Having that attitude that you do, I got to ask, before, obviously the event didn't go as planned, but he'd like say the day before or whatever, in your head, you're presuming you're going to finish it and it's going to be ticked off. Were you already looking at something beyond it at that point? Or was that, for now at least, that 100-mile race kind of the pinnacle? Or had you already thought, oh, well, what comes after that?
That I had decided before, and that was it. I have no desire even now to do an ultra. I think what messes with me is not having finished, making it 66 miles out of the 100, to where you're like, I'd love to get redemption someday, but I also know what that cost is as far as time, commitment, even finances, and it's just there's a lot more than just at eye level. So going into it, I felt like I wasn't as humble as I should have been. I didn't have the experience. I looked at things and I said, I'm training harder than everybody. That's how I felt in my head. I'm putting in more miles. I'm doing more climbing, doing everything necessary. And with that, I got humbled quick out there. Things went wrong that I couldn't have foreseen. So I don't even think it was necessarily a training problem. Got water poisoning, basically. When it got to a point where you're drinking out of streams in a sense, and you have like a filter bottle, but it's easy for that to get mixed up, which one's got the right lid, the bottle, and you can kind of give yourself some parasitic issues. Mm-hmm. So at mile 30, I'm basically having to go to the bathroom constantly. And it's just, that was a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
And just, then I was using baby wipes, which I didn't realize the alcohol from them.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So there was just, this whole thing derailed everything. And I kept hanging in there as long as I could, but just rookie mistakes where I didn't think about these little things I should have, the little loose ends. But to answer your question, like there's definitely nothing greater than that I'd like to do. Like I dialed it back now to like the marathon distance, and that's even, I limit it to like once a year. It's like there's no more than one a year. I don't want it to get back to the same cycle where it's like, oh, we got to do 3 marathons and we're always in prep and that's a priority. Because obviously as the race gets close, like you do somewhat have to lock in that last 8 weeks and you have to take it very serious and dial it up. But I don't want that to be the case all the time. So I'm trying to find more of a balance.
So when you dial that up, then what does the weight training look like? Then the inverse of that when you pull it back? I mean, is there a phasic approach that builds this whole year?
Yeah, so after the 100-miler, I didn't want to really run much after that. So I would do 2 days a week of like 6 miles. It's like 12 miles a week. And I went full on into lifting, pushed the lifts up, put like 20 pounds back on, got up to like a 510-pound bare knee squat, 353 bench, and a 640 deadlift. And that was kind of the peak, and I looked completely different, a lot bigger. And then I started having back pain again. And then we got back into, I'm like, all right, I'll start running a little more. So when I'm close to a race, the lifting may go back to just the main lifts where it's like I'm benching and then I'm doing, I was trying to do deadlift. That really hasn't been able to be a thing, but split squats have kind of turned into a main lift because I can work the legs. It helps a lot and it's not painful. But benching, split squats, and then some mobility work every single day. I still do that on my hips. That's been key. And that's kind of what it looks like as a race gets close. And then if a race isn't close, I throw in all the accessories. I'm lifting 3 days a week, 2 upper, 1 lower. I've just kind of had to make it where Bulgarian split squats are the main lift instead of deadlift and squat because the back.
Sure.
But I like them, and it trains the legs hard and posterior chain, and I don't get the pain. And I've kind of just had to make peace with that.
True. I mean, I've got written down here, and I think this is cool. After your event, the 100-mile event, you had down that your squat was at 385, bench was 275, deadlift was 501, which is a pretty far cry from where the numbers you're giving there. So if someone is trying to be, let's call it a hybrid athlete, we all know what that term means, right? Does it require a certain amount of confidence that if you're going to dial up the running, you have to be happy or confident that those lifts can go down, but they can also come back up? Likewise, when you're focusing on the lifts more, your running times aren't going to be as great. So there's going to be a certain amount of confidence in yourself where you're desperately not trying to grip onto both of those at the same time. Did you find that hard to deal with at first, or did that come kind of naturally?
Yeah, it was easier to deal with, and it took 12 weeks to go from like the 385 squats to 510 and 275 bench to 353. So muscle memory was part of it, gaining basically 20 pounds back, eating properly, like all that played a huge role in that. And I was confident I could get it back. I'm almost trying to get to where there's more of a happy medium now, where it's like, I want to be able to bench 315 pretty much at all times and still be fairly fast. And then when the race is 8 weeks out, it may take a bit of a hit. And it got down to 275 this last go around. But going into the ultra, like I stopped lifting almost 2 months out, which was a huge mistake. And I think it could have contributed to cramping issues and such, because lifting has been shown to kind of prevent that. But just before the marathon now, I just stopped training like 13 days out. So it was a much shorter period of time to let the legs kind of come in fresh. So it is one of those things where it's like, if you're dialed in on one goal, the other goal is going to take somewhat of a hit. If you want to be halfway decent at it, you almost have to do that, because you can kind of be mediocre at everything, or you can dial one.
I don't know that, because I think there's a bigger thing at play here where I believe, all athletic ability, maybe some sports excluded, are still going to be based upon maximum strength, right? Now that maximum strength is going to have a maximum and it's going to have a minimum. And the minimum is going to be what's going to be required to be able to finish the ultra or the marathon or whatever it is. And let's say it's a 400-pound squat. right? Well, if you start at the 550, 565 and it drops to the 400, cool. But if you're only at the 400 and it drops down to the 185, now do you have knee problems? Do you have all these other things because the structural integrity isn't strong enough to be able to handle the miles? You know what I say? So it's a matter of, and yours is probably going to be higher because of your background than what's actually required. You know, but I think that a lot of marathoners and stuff lose sight of this. And then what happens as they get older is that minimum drops just a little bit. You know, even with a little bit of training or no training, even if they don't do any training, their maximum strength is going to drop as they age. And then boom, that can be a tribute or a cause of their knee issues, hip issues, or whatever it's going to be. You know, so it's figuring out what that minimum is, right? And maybe the 385 is higher than what your actual minimum is. You know, maybe your minimum's like 315, which means it doesn't have to go up to 600. You don't know. You'll figure that out. You know, that will be figured out. But I think that's a bigger role than a lot of people give credit to with that. Now, the bench, it's probably debatable with what you're doing there. But the split squat most definitely is going to probably be one. Some kind of hinge, which you're kind of fucked on that one a little bit, is probably one. And the squat would definitely. What else would you think would fall in there that I'm not thinking right now?
I don't know, I'd maybe a loaded carry or something like that, like for postural strength is probably going to have a great carryover there. I mean, when you're running a marathon, it's hard to just carry your body weight for that long, right? And I think, and people need to be quicker as well, I think is the thing maybe that misses. Please correct me if I'm wrong here, but you know, my granddad was a marathon runner. I think he did his last one when he was 68 or 69. And people always hear marathon pace and we kind of think it's slow until someone who's good at marathons runs past you and you realize that they're basically sprinting for 3 hours straight. So I think the other, lifts definitely, but some kind of speed or power work I think is missing for a lot of people there. Because if you want to be getting those kind of times, like you're running a lot faster than people think you are, you know? What do you think about that?
Yes, I think core work, like to an extent, because you feel it. Your core gets very sore running that long at that speed. That's part of it. So that's where like the single arm farmer carries I like a lot. Those seem to help. And then the other big one for me is just the split squats, and that's kind of what I'm doing in place of squats. And I'd love to have a hinge movement in there. It just gets to a point where it's just not going to cooperate, unfortunately. But you still get the posterior chain to a fair bit and the quads and adductors with a split squat. So I push those very heavy. I mean, a week ago I was doing sets of 5 with 250 pounds. It's with the bar, and then sets of 10 with 221 pounds. So that's something I definitely push, and it has kept me injury free. Like I don't get knee issues. I don't get any other issues. When I was getting into it, I had some shin splints and stress fracture issues in my tibia, but everybody does when you're getting into it. It's like you talked about with shirted benching, where the radius and ulna, the forearms they're under such a load that they're not used to. They get microfractures and they have to come back and the bone has to literally remodel to be able to support that weight. So it's the same way when you're pounding on your legs. The bones literally have to remodel the tibia to come back stronger. But everyone who ups their mileage and is heavier and goes through running, that's part of the process.
True. For people who are listening to you talk about this now, someone who's very successfully gone from, should we say, pure lifter to more of a hybrid athlete now, what advice would you have for people who are just starting to do that? Because, people will just go, okay, I'm going to start running twice a week or whatever it might be. But there's going to be more to it than that, right? There's going to be different types of fatigue. There's going to be impact on the joints. Running technique would be, I think, a great point to make on, because we all assume we can do it. So what advice would you have for people who are maybe looking to branch out there to make sure that they do it well? Because I think that transition is generally not managed particularly well.
Yeah, I think like with lifting, get a coach, because there's so many things that I learned. I thought you would just go out and run the same pace every day or whatever. And there needs to be structured workouts. It's just like with lifting, like the conjugate method, where we have a max effort day. There's a dynamic day. There's the more hypertrophy repeated effort day. So every day has its purpose. It's not all the same thing every day. It's the same way with running. You don't just go and run the same speed every day. So that's a big part of it. That's how you improve. And that's when I saw a breakthrough. It's like you got to have days where you're doing certain distances at a certain pace, and days where you're just holding back a bit. And that's kind of the key. So that's the big thing. But it can be done. They can be balanced, and it does wonders for your health. So I've enjoyed this journey, but make no mistake, at the end of the day, I'd still be like loving pushing for like a 750 deadlift. That's what I'd prefer to do. Just hasn't been hasn't necessarily been an option right now. So.
And for you now, obviously we've spoken so many times about how important periodization is for training in general, but for someone like yourself who has very multimodal goals, you know, your lifting based goals and your running based goals, how much does that then step up in terms of importance? And do you need, should we say, a longer term view to your periodization, because there are going to be times of the year when this is more important as opposed to that, whereas, you know, most of us are just like, what's the next 2 or 3 months look like?
No, that's a good question, right? Because I know how you would peak for the powerlifting meets. It's just like, fuck, there's a meet, fuck it, I'm doing that one. And you just go, right? So while there may have been, if you look back, some kind of long-term view, there really wasn't. It was just like, this is here, we're going to go do it. Where now you may be in this position to where you have to step back and look at this more physically than when you were powerlifting.
Yes. I'd say I look at it a year at a time.
Yeah.
So I'll be like,
yeah. So were you doing that with powerlifting?
No, it was powerlifting was it's a constant. This isn't how it should be done. This is how it was. It was a constant, the cycle never ended, both training and PEDs. It morphed into one thing. We just kept going. It was like, there'd be this meet in California. It'd be a pretty big meet or whatever. You want to do that one. So you stay on your supplements, and you keep pushing heavy, and it was like hanging on the ride as long as you could, essentially.
Well, the question would be, and it's a little flip on what Tom just asked, is now that you see how a year phase, operates, and is the most effective modality to be able to have the marathon that you want to have, does it make you look back? Well, we can't go back. Like, if you could go back and then apply that same type of logic into the powerlifting, like, I'm going to do 2 meets a year. We're going to space them out like this. This one's going to be the main one. We're going to lead into this one. I'm not going to ask, would that have made you a better lifter? What I'm going to ask is, do you think that would have made you a healthier lifter for a longer period of time? Because the numbers still may have ended up being the same. Genetics, everything, a lot of shit plays into this, right? Where in a way we can hack the system to be able to get the big numbers sooner. But when you do that, you might be taken off 5 years, that if things were planned out a little better.
Yes, I definitely would have changed a lot of the structure of it, as far as probably, just like you said, it'd be a meet every 6 months. If I could have done this optimally, it would have been 2, even probably 15-week cycles. So it'd be like 30 weeks of the year that you're on an actual cycle. And then during that other time, I would have brought the test down to about 125. And I would have planned it out in that manner, and then just had those periods where I'm ramping up going into the meet and doing more foundational, higher volume work outside of the meet, more isolation movements. And I think that would have kept me healthier from the standpoint of not getting injured, as well as healthier overall. And it just would have probably tacked on definitely a few years compared to how it's been. Because the peak came quickly, but it also fell off quickly. And that's how it is with so many guys. And it's usually often in their 20s. There are guys in their 30s who are smart about it, and they continue to progress into their 30s. But you see a lot of these guys in their 20s, and they're up there at the top, and then they're gone.
See, that's what I've always wondered is it takes a long time to get to that position, right? But what if you can take all those people, myself included, yourself included, and add 4 more years to the end, right? Right. So right where that peak was, you're able to add 4 more years, but we weren't able to do that because we were too trashed, beat up, or whatever it wasn't there. Where it makes you wonder if it was more logically thought out and they could have that extra 4 years, then they walk away with 200 more pounds on their total. because by the time, because usually it does happen between 25 and 30, right? Where optimally like 30 to 4, 35 should be where the real best peak would be, assuming they didn't get in when they were like 14 or 12, so there's not the accumulated damage, but they're out before that maturity can really hit in. And I do think there's the young person mindset that's still kind of in the 20s. You got to kind of grow out of that and still be around to be able to grow out of that, to have more of a 30s mindset, to realize that restoration matters, recovery matters, sleep matters, nutrition matters. That kind of comes with, some people are learning it earlier now, but that kind of comes with age. But why do we start looking at that later in the career? Because you're fucked up.
That's it.
You're not looking at that beforehand. So it's that what if thing, and you still work and advise a lot of lifters. So when you try to give this type of advice, how receptive are they?
It's very age dependent. It really is. It's just it's tough. It's very hard to get younger guys in their 20s, especially like, let's say 19 to 25. It's very hard to get them to understand you don't have to be lifting at 85, 90% all the time. Like, we need to get some volume work in. We need to get some sub-max work in that 70, 80% range with more volume. So it's hard to get them on board with that. They don't necessarily understand what that's going to do for their peak 12 weeks down the road. They want to lift heavy every single week. That's one of the biggest things I see. But the guys in their 30s, they pretty much will listen to anything. Like, they're just like, they're full on board. They don't want necessarily the quick results. They're more dialed back. It's harder to rein in the younger guys. So I think age is such a huge part of it, where there's almost a brash ego in a sense. And we all had it, where you just think you can get away with it. You think you know better. You think, why would I lift lighter? Like, it's not going to be necessary. So you can't see the long term. You're living more for the short term. And I do see that a lot in terms of coaching, where it's more of a struggle as far as that's concerned. Like, guys in their 30s are so easy to train by comparison. 20s, it's just a little more, it's harder to rein in. And I was the same way. So sometimes you have to take the lumps and go through it. Like, I wish I had done mobility. I really didn't pay attention to it till I needed to, till something hurt. And you wonder, had I been on that the whole time, would these issues have come up? Things like that. So,
well, I think it's a cool thing because you still remember that. So it makes it easier for you to communicate with them, because you know what they're thinking, because you were the same way. As when I'm talking to somebody like that, I can't sit there and get pissed about it.
No.
It's like, dude, I was you and I thought I was full of shit too. And you just keep trying, and hopefully they'll strain something really bad, and then they'll listen. Normally that's what it's going to take. Like, something hopefully not too bad is going to happen, and they're going to be like, man, maybe this shit don't work, or they have an arrhythmia, or some shit like that, to be able to listen. But it's a tough one, but it helps that you can still remember it, because as you get older and you start to see other lifters trying to help younger lifters, you're going to see they're going to start to forget that.
Yes, and with coaching, I have to find somewhat of a middle ground with what I think is the best path, and also what I know they're going to abide by. Like, I have to keep, you have to be willing to listen to the client, and if sometimes they need those heavier sets to be happy and to do the other work, you're going to have to throw that in. So it's a middle ground in a way. I've learned with coaching, like, everybody's different. So there are the guys you can lay out the exact game plan you think is going to deliver the best results. They're 35 years old. They're going to abide to it to a T. And then with other guys, you have to throw them some fun stuff every so often, and you have to keep it interesting, because it can get boring. It can get like that. It can get stale. And just like you said, we were in that same boat. When I was 20, 24, 25, I wanted heavy weights too all the time. So it's like I'm finding that middle ground. And everybody's different. Mm-hmm. Everybody's a different personality, a different temperament. And that's the thing I've had to learn with coaching.
Yeah. Because, I mean, in reality, like, adherence is going to be the thing that actually gets you success, right? Like you can have the perfect plan, but if their adherence is 0, 100% optimal times 0% 0, right? So how do you go about, say you've got these younger lifters now, how do you go about kind of scoping out where they sit on that spectrum where, here is what they want to do, which is probably very self-destructive. Here is, the perfect game plan long term. How do you kind of test the water and see where they are on that sliding scale and kind of adjust for that individual?
I'm always looking for ways to improve my training, business, life, but none of that matters if my sleep is trash. If your sleep sucks, your recovery and performance is compromised. Sleep is the ultimate recovery tool, and temperature plays a massive role in this. This is where the Chili Pad comes in. It's a water-based, temperature-controlled mattress topper that fits any bed. You can set the temperature from 55 degrees to 115 degrees and even schedule changes throughout the night. It also has dual zone control, so I can stay cool while my wife stays warm. Visit www.sleepme/tabletalk to get 20% off your Chili Pad with code TABLETALK. This special offer is available for Table Talk listeners and only for a limited time. Order it today with free shipping and try it out for 30 days. You can return it for free if you don't like it with their Sleep Me trial. Visit www.sleepme/tabletalk and see why cold sleep is your ultimate ally in performance and recovery.
Well, you'll know 2 weeks in. I mean, it's pretty quick. You can tell how bought in somebody is on the vision or what you are going to have them doing. And I don't write out more than a week at a time with that in mind. Like 1 week is planned out at a time. And typically a training cycle would be about 12 weeks. I find that to be a good sweet spot. Let's break that down into 3 blocks. So you'll get a sense early on what someone likes to do, like what they need from you. Just like some people need more consistent feedback and others might go a week, and it's just every individual is different. So I've seen all personality types. I've seen all different kind of goals. Like now I'm getting a lot more guys who are military based, who are trying to prepare for like Hell Week, buds, that sort of stuff. Or I've got a lot of Navy guys. They're doing a combination of running, lifting, and then I have other guys who just are trying to get as strong as possible still. So it's been kind of cool because it's been a lot more all over the map compared to years ago. It was pretty straightforward. Everybody was trying to get stronger in that one regard. Mm-hmm. And that's still my greatest passion, but there has been changes, obviously.
Do you find the mentality to training is different when you're working with those in the armed forces? Do you find that they're either more compliant or they enjoy the more regimented structure, as in like just point and go, because that's kind of more what they're used to? Or do you find that those personalities are still just as varied even in those populations?
That's a great question. The military guys, they're right up there most compliant. Like they will dial in. They will listen to everything. They will do it to a T. They're very structured. They try to use perfect form. It's crazy. Like you could give them anything, tell them anything, they'll do it. So that's been pretty universal. That's the really interesting part. And it takes a certain kind of person to be successful in the military. So that makes a lot of sense. But I have seen that. That's really cool.
Does that maybe just show the effect that like the culture that you're around can have on your person, like, in that kind of background where there are certain things that are expected to you, everyone toes the line a certain way, that carries over to everything. Whereas maybe we take the average young lifter who, most people train on their own now, right? They're kind of let loose and they do what they want. All of a sudden they get a coach who's like, you need to do X, Y, and Z in this kind of manner. Maybe that doesn't rub so well with them. Whereas, I don't know, Dave, maybe you can talk to maybe when younger lifters were generally coming up in groups or training crews where they had older individuals, more experienced individuals right from the get-go say, this is how we do things. I wonder if that would have been different, if you get what I'm saying there.
Well, I've thought a lot about this because I'm doing a AMA podcast next week, and it's going to touch on this. And it is just in general, if we look at the things that you need to do in training to get better, right? It would be like looking at these notes here, right? And all the main stuff that you can read here is the stuff that you have to do. All this stuff in the margins is all the stuff we see online. right? So everybody wants to do, and I get it, because that's how coaches will position themselves. That's what sells in the market. That's what gets attention, is all the shit in the margins. But what's happening is all that stuff becomes in the brain of everybody who's absorbing it, is this is what I have to do. And it's at the expense of all the things that they really need to do that matter. Now, as you get more advanced, then maybe the margins are bigger. You know, like the screen there with the Table Talk logo. Then it will be more nuanced, because you're specializing, because the gains are going to be much harder when you're at the top of your game on anything. So then, yes, there's more nuance. But if you're an intermediate or a beginner, all of this main shit is being glossed over. Like it's not a big deal. But the main shit, you know, is like lay the training out, have some type of plan, make sure you train hard. All these type of things isn't really that sexy. But then even that gets fucking nuanced, like the train hard. Mm-hmm. Like, what's that mean? Because if you listen to some people, train hard, but not too hard, right? You know, or you're not training hard enough, or make sure you get the recovery in there, but not too much recovery. You know, make sure your nutrition's on point, but don't be that serious about it. Like, fuck, I'm confused when I listen to people. You know, it's like, what the hell? You know, and that's kind of how I see that over where if you're in a group and if you're around the right people, then the right people are going to focus on the basic shit that person has to do. Because if they're with that basic stuff, that's the only way you can find where the nuance is going to be in the first place. Mm. Because through that, they're not going to be able to, no matter who you're working with, it's Gen Pop or whatever it is, through that, they're just going through a basic program. You're like, ooh, wow, this really sucks. Mm-hmm. You know, compared to the other stuff, this really sucks. You know, we need to probably do a little bit more of that. This is super good. Maybe we don't need to do as much of that. But right now, it just seems like everybody's so hyper-focused on all the nuanced shit. You need an ice bath. You need this. You need these peptides. You need this. You need this. You need this. And now that's taken 3 hours a fucking day, you know, and the training sucks because they don't want to train too hard because they need to leave so many reps in reserve. Meanwhile, they're probably not training hard enough, but they're told don't train. You know, that's the mind-numbing shit for me, is that. Because we sit back as people that kind of know what's going on and like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this doesn't make that much difference. Mm-hmm. You know, well, it might add 2%. Well, the other 90%, 98% you suck at. So you're already in a deficit of 40%. So you're going to go from 40 to 2% because of a certain fucking peptide? Congratulations, thumbs up, pat on your back, you dumbass. You know, that's the stupid shit. I mean, are you seeing the same things?
Well, I think something you said clicked with me where I'm like, people are getting input from so many different sources to where it all conflicts with one another. It's like, that's the one bad thing about the internet now, and especially even in person, this is part of it. You know, we've had to have this conversation at times, or we've had to bring this up at our gym, and our gym is very small, about 85 members, and they're not like, it's not a hardcore gym. It's mainly just like a normal population who we do compete in powerlifting. But we've had to be like, listen, we can't have everybody giving input because then it just all confuses everybody. It crosses, it conflicts with what we're saying. You're telling them something else. And pretty soon no one knows what the heck they're doing because they're hearing different things. And I see that all the time, even with coaching. It's like someone's getting input from here. They're listening to this guy's way of doing it. And then they want to implement what they heard over here and then over here. And pretty soon you're bringing all these ideas together, but you have nothing to show for it because it's just a whole lot of nothing instead of sticking with one plan.
Well, what they're not looking for is the consistencies amongst all those people that are speaking.
There you go.
Right? Because all those people are speaking aren't speaking about that, right? Because you can take people that have completely different philosophies and sit down with them, and 90% of it they're going to agree on.
Yeah, that's...
You know, the 10% becomes what's popular and what everybody wants to try, you know, because it's what's sexy in there. And I get it, because the industry's always been like this since you go back to magazines. So I'm not going to say it's social media or all this other shit. The same stuff happened way back then. You know, it was just, because you're in a gym with other people, to be able to say, hey, just do this, you know, and at least tap more of the things that actually matter. And that's where, as you just noted, with your members, you're kind of doing that. It's like, hey, let's just chill back on this. Let's make sure that the main things are being taken care of. That way, instead of getting the 40% improvement you're going to get with all this nuance, maybe we can get it up to 60, which still isn't where it should be, but it's better than the 40, with a bunch of other shit that's in there.
I mean, we always look at this stuff through like a lifting lens, right? The nature of what we do, but all of that stuff, how does that look like in the running world? So do those same problems exist to the same degree as in the fads and the stuff that's distracting away from the core tenets and all that type of stuff? Is that going on there, or is it more of a lifting specific trap, should we say, in your experience?
I'm sure it goes on with that, but I don't personally deal with it as much, because even the handful of people I have who do running too in their training that I coach, there's no friction there. It's all dialed in. There's no, not as much of the majoring and the minor kind of thing. That is and I think that's just because I'm much more heavily into the lifting side, the lifting world. This has just been a recent addition, but that can be a thing where it's like, instead of guys getting better at their training, they're focused on getting the best shoes. And it's like, well, who really cares what shoes you have if you're not putting the work in? It doesn't, like, it's just what you said. They're majoring in the minors, and it's all that extra stuff that adds 1% is all well and good if you're doing everything else. And a lot of people aren't. So at the end of the day, it is back to basics. It's back to volume, like train your volume with your lifting, like get the volume and get the necessary volume, specificity, the amount of frequency, how often you're training it, things. Find the indicator lifts that are going to have the best carryover to your main lifts. Be consistent. Don't overshoot your numbers. Not every day is supposed to be super heavy, like that kind of stuff. It's the basics. And if someone abides by that, they're going to be successful.
Well, I think if I understood what you just said correctly is the reason why you don't see all the nuance that's going on, say with the running, is because you're not looking for it, because you're too focused on your own training to figure out what works. So it's probably there, but you're not seeing it because your focus is on what you need to do for yourself to get better, which we can flick back to the population that we're talking about with the lifting. There probably would be better to not be looking for it and just focus on what they need to do to get better. And I'm going to jump to an assumption. Maybe you learned that through powerlifting, because as you were coming up, I'm sure you're being bombarded, with all different types of information. Train this way, take this drug, take this drug. And at a certain point, you're vulnerable to all that. But at another point, you're just like, you know what? Fuck all you guys. This is what's working for me. And you kind of just shut it all out and maybe listen to some people here and there, but you shut the noise out so you can focus on yourself. And it looks like that's carried over into this whole running thing.
Yeah. I look back on those early days and it's like my sources of influence were you guys, Elite FTS, Joe DeFranco, and T-Nation. Those were the online sources. That's what I read through, that kind of stuff. And then in person, it was like the Lily Bridge crew. So I had really good influences around me. I had really good people to look up to and really good information. And now I think there's also such a bombardment of different information. And really back then, you didn't have anyone to compare yourself to. There wasn't this huge online presence. So it was like beyond the guys you trained with, you didn't even know what was out there. You didn't know who was out there. So it kept you more honed in, where the progression came about more naturally. It wasn't like I saw some guy do something and I wanted to beat him. And it just came more naturally because it was like I knew what the Lily Bridges could lift, and I just trained with them, and I trained with Dan at Madtown, and like my eyes weren't going every which way looking at other people, and that helped. So it was just a more dialed in presence.
But you're not doing that now, looking at all the people that would be in the marathon that you're going to run next.
No, I just don't care.
You see what I'm saying, though? You see what I'm saying? You're not hyper focused on that.
No.
And this is interesting, right? Because it's not going to change your time. knowing what they're doing, where when the lifters, it's not going to change their lift, knowing what somebody else is doing. It's not going to change your training, seeing that these are going to be the people that are going to be in that marathon. But the lifters, it may change their training, seeing what somebody else is doing.
Yes.
But
no, I think you're right. I think that's a good way of putting it. And that might be it. It's like I know my plan, and maybe it's age is part of it. I know my plan. I stick to my plan. I don't really care who shows up or what they're doing. That's not going to affect it. Could I have said that in my 20s? Maybe not. It was just a different time. But if we could get everyone to understand that, everyone would get a lot stronger. It's one of the things you got to learn.
Sure. I mean, when you're coaching lifters, obviously we're very well versed in like how important the technique side of things come into it. So when you started off running, did you transfer that importance over to your running? Like, did you have a big kind of focus on your running gait and your stride and all that type of thing when you got into it? Or is that something that you kind of had to learn as you go on? Because I think that's something, again, we have this misconception that I'm going to start running, and you presume it's something that you can kind of do because you're a human being, right? We're made to walk and run, whereas it's really not that at all. So how did you go about, was that a big focus for you, and how did you go about improving that, or how did you look at improving it in others?
That's a good question. The thing I've learned with running, and it's really interesting because I could also tie this back to lifting, now looking at things. When I was getting into running, I really thought about that. Like, I was hyper aware of my gait, how my foot was striking, what my arms were doing, that sort of thing. And I remember I started listening to their fast guys, like them way faster than me. And they're like, oh yeah, we never think about anything. We just go out there and run, and like, you don't think about it at all. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to think about anything. And lo and behold, I started getting faster, and my form started getting better, and just the amount of reps and the mileage. And now I look at how my foot strikes. Back then, where I was very supinated, I was landing on like the outside of my feet. Now it's like dead on in the center. I'm much more efficient. I'm much faster. And I'm like, wow, they had it right. It'll sort of fall into place if you don't think about it. Your body will become more efficient over time. So I never worry about what my arms are doing or how my foot's landing. And I just turn that part off. And after 3 years, it's become where it needs to be. And that was something literally the fastest guys told me, guys who run in 240 marathons. They're like, we don't think about that. It settles in. And I point this back to lifting because I see this with clients. I get a lot of intermediates. I don't get a lot of guys who are going to Josh Bryant who are already deadlifting 800 pounds and benching 600. I've had some strong guys, but most of my guys are intermediates. So they've been lifting for a few years. They know the basics. They know the form. I'm not having to go through, here's how to deadlift, that kind of stuff. That's already in place. They're just mainly like, I want to get stronger now. I want to do this in the proper manner. So every once in a while, you'll make some tweaks and such. You'll see things early on with a new client where you'll be like, we got to tweak this, but they're minor. I no longer try to go in and overhaul someone's form on a given lift, because when I used to do that, it would put all these thoughts in their head. It would throw off everything. They'd lose their explosiveness on a certain lift. Everything would go to heck. They'd be spinning their wheels for a period of weeks or months. And in the end, we'd never really get anywhere with these major overhauls, I should say, of form. And what I look back on now, I'm like, you learn over time with lifting what your most efficient form is on a given lift. Everybody's structured differently. So while it might seem unorthodox to you, the form that works for someone, it works for them for a reason. Their body they've found this is what's most efficient. So I only make subtle tweaks now, small little tweaks. I no longer am like, we need to change everything, because at the end of the day, it causes people to spin their wheels, and your body finds what's going to work best oftentimes in an intermediate lifter. Might be different in a beginner, but that's something I've seen.
Sure. Do you think for that path, that process to work, there has to be a form of attention to detail? Because, take, for example, your running. When your stride is good and your arm movement is good, there's probably going to be a fluidity to your movement that almost maybe gets to a point where you feel a bit effortless. In the same way that we've all done a lift where it just for that moment, it went, right? Do you think for that process to work, then that lifter needs to just be attentive enough to feel for that qualitative feedback? Do you think that's an important part of it?
Yes, I think, and this is why, this is the other part guys don't get. With coaching, the most important part is arguably seeing that video footage. And it's not about your ego or like, I need to film my lifts to post them. It's like, I want certain footage of lifts to be able to make sure everything's falling into place. So you can get that from the video. Like, I can see, is this off? Is that off? And the lifter can kind of see it as well. They can see, oh, that set didn't quite feel right. And you look back at the video, you're like, well, there we go. We found what was going on. So that's where I think, like, filming the lifts is an important aspect of things, to just see what's going on, especially when you get to the 90% range. You're not necessarily going to have form breakdown under 90. You're not. You could, and this is the other thing I see guys fall into, this problem where they do a form overhaul and they go, it feels amazing. And I'm like, of course it does. You're using 60%. Like, nothing's going to fall apart at that. Let's see how that looks at 90. Then we're going to know. And then, of course, it looks terrible. And I'm like, all right, so we can't get stuck in this thing where we make a form change and it's like, we're using such low weight. Of course, everything feels good. It's not going to matter. It's like, let's see how that holds up under the 90, 100% range. And that's where I'm like, be careful to do too much. Be careful to do too much of an overhaul on your form, no matter who you are. I've had guys deadlift all different ways. I've had guys bench all different ways, and none of them are the correct way. It's just what works for each individual. So you got to be in tune with yourself, but that's where I think the video filming can be a good thing. It's not about ego trying to record everything. It's about, I want to see where things are breaking down and what's going on. And so I use that tool all the time.
From a coaching perspective, do you find that maybe some coaches struggle with that approach? Maybe because it's a confidence issue or something like that. And what I mean by that is, you have the confidence to say, I'm a good enough coach that I can let you find your own way a little bit, and we can work with your structure and what you feel works for you. Whereas maybe a lot of coaches fall into this dogmatic approach where I want all my lifters to squat this way, bench this way, deadlift this way, because I have confidence. I know that works, whereas you're kind of going into unknowns there and trusting the lifter and so on. Do you think there comes a certain amount of confidence and belief in your own ability to give some of that responsibility to the lifter, to let them experiment and say, no, this is what feels good for me?
I think it's important to put the context that you're working with intermediate lifters into that.
True.
Sure.
It's not beginners. Like I said, I don't get someone who's fresh off the block and has no clue what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So they're not, but I think this applies to intermediate and advanced, like especially someone advanced, even more so. They've gotten to where they are by doing things a certain way as far as technique. So a complete overhaul might not be the best way, but in a beginner, that's where the complete overhaul comes into play, for sure. Because you'll have people doing some crazy stuff. I've seen guys with absolutely insane, deadlift form, but they don't know any better. It's not their fault. So that's the demographic I work with. Definitely more on the intermediate level, but we do have to have the caveat as far as that goes. And I've had guys pull in the 800s. I've had guys bench 550, but that's not the majority.
Mm-hmm, sure.
So,
but there's a skill either way for you as a coach, where there's a context where you need to step in, and there's a context where you need to take a step back and go, this is what works.
Yeah, and I think early on in it, I've been doing it now for 12 years, started in 2013. And early on, I felt like I would almost try to do too much, where I was like, I need to overhaul everybody and make it perfect. And then I just kind of learned, like, that's not what people need. They're doing the things they're doing for a reason as far as form and all that, and more the smaller changes. So I've definitely changed over the years as far as backing off on that to a degree, because I've seen so many different styles, and sometimes it just works better for someone.
Sure. You mentioned in your notes one of the subjects you wanted to cover on coaching was how training should vary as people age, and maybe mistakes that people make in relation to that. Are there any for you, like, big red flags that you see a lot of the time where that people are doing where they're not changing their training as they age, or things that people are doing wrong in that regard?
I think, like, when you're younger, you can get away with a lot more. Obviously, you just don't have the mileage. You don't have the wear and tear. So it's almost one of those things where if we could train more optimally, like we talked about earlier, you're gonna have a longer shelf life. You're gonna do better long term. You're gonna have less issues. And if I can get that through people's heads, they tend to do better. But I see guys now, especially the guys in their 30s, they have a family, they work a full-time job. Like, they can't be in the gym for hours on end. We've touched on this before, where it's like, I got to make this session to where it's efficient, but it's getting the job done. 60 to 90 minutes, maybe. Things like that. Maybe 3 days a week of training instead of 5 or 6. It's these kind of changes have to be accounted for with a more middle-aged group. And as you get older, like, I've even had to dial in my training to be a lot more efficient. It's like, I can't be just sitting in the gym all day. It's not going to work. Not with responsibilities of a family, trying to earn a living, that sort of stuff. So you have to take all that into account. Back when I was younger as a coach, I maybe was just like, I'm going to just dial it up for everybody. But you didn't realize, like, you have a 35-year-old, having him do a 3-hour session. Like, that's not going to work. It's not going to hold up long term. He's got stuff to do. He can't sustain that. So I try to make it as sustainable as possible, both in terms of the body and how it fits with their life. Because there's plenty of people working shift work, or they're alternating between night shift, day shift. They're doing 12-hour shifts in ICU. They're police officers. Like, you have to work around that. You have to take that into account. That's going to impact recovery. The lack of sleep, they can't sleep for 10 hours a day. It's going to impact recovery. So you got to make these sessions to where you're not killing them. Like that, all that has to be taken into account. It's not just what you want to program in.
Do you think in these scenarios, though, like for you with the demographic you're coaching, like Dave, you're a great example, like someone who's running a business, do you think actually when life kind of chokes out your training time and diminishes it down, do you think that actually makes you a better coach or a lifter long term? Because then you don't have the luxury of making up for whatever you're missing by just training 5 days a week or for 3 hours, right? You've got to go, right, I've got 3 sessions for 90 minutes or 60 minutes a week. What is the 80 to 90% that we were talking about that's in the center? Do you think it forces you to hone in on that stuff better?
Yeah, I think that 2 things that people should do as they're on their path, through their 20s, is figure out what your maximum effective dose is, which is the 3-4 hour things that we were talking about, but also figure out your minimum, right? And the minimum may not actually improve you, but you won't decrease. Because as you get older and those more responsibilities come in, there's going to be times where you need to know what that minimum is, right? And for my own training, that could be, cardiovascular health is priority during the week. Weekends, it's kind of upside the other way around. But I know 1 or 2 in one training session, at most maybe 5 working sets of resistance work is my minimum dose. That doesn't take very long. It's like a fucking chest press machine. A couple warm-up sets to figure out what weight I'm going to do, nail it, hit it, done, right on to the next one. 15 minutes maybe, right? And that's minimum, right? Is it going to make me grow, get jacked or whatever? No, but it's going to hold it steady so I can still do the shit on the heavy days that I want to be able to do. Now I could, if I had more time, spread that out, make it 15 sets per body part, and all that other stuff, but it's not necessary because I know what the minimum is and I know what the maximum. So as you get older, the maximum becomes fun. I got time, I want to have more fun. Maximum, right? Minimum becomes, this is what I have to do to not regress. And I wish I would have learned that minimum sooner, right? Because that would also play into the longevity, right? Because that could have been physically kind of put in, like, this is less joint wear and tear by a lot, 5 work sets compared to 20 over a period of 4-month period of time. That's a lot over 15 years. That's a lot, when it comes to the joint wear and tear. And so, and with that, As coaches, you're kind of forced to do that because of a client that you have. This is just the allocated time that you have. So you got to figure out what's the minimum and what's the mean, because the mean's really where they're probably going to need to be if they want to progress. But here's where you want them. Here's what worst case scenario they have to do. Here's what, if they have more time, sure, go ahead, be able to put it into there. But I don't think people take enough time on both ends of the spectrum, because I think you need to figure out the max too. Right? Because there may be times you have to do more work than your body is able to actually do, which is accommodation, which is how you kind of get better. But sometimes that can be taken to extremes, because your body will adapt, but as you get older, that becomes a little compromised. You don't adapt the same way that you did before. And none of us are going to beat that. Age is going to get all of us.
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, I think that is key though, the minimum effective dose, because there are a lot of guys where it's like, we're going to do maybe these 3 or 4 exercises in an hour, and this is going to be the most efficient. This is going to lead to the best results. And then other guys, they want to train longer. They're younger. They have a better situation as far as the time is concerned, and they want to do a lot more, and I'll throw more at them. So it really comes down to the person, because I have it all different sides of the spectrum as far as that goes. And then with the guys who are, the few guys I have who are running, it's like, we got to dial back the accessories, because then you're getting into this part where it's like, if you have a lot of accessories with the running and the lifting, you're looking at 2.5-hour sessions. So it's making things sustainable. That has to be one of the main things you look at right from the beginning. Like, is this plan going to hold up over the course of months, over the course of a year? Is it just going to hold up, and they're going to hold up for a month and then they're going to burn out? And so we can't set someone up on a path to failure with that in mind.
Well, that goes into what is part of the main text without the margins is consistency.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things. And what you just said is the perfect example of that. Because if you go like that all the time and then you do get hurt or burned out, your long-term consistency is just now dropped.
Exactly.
Where the short-term progress over the 12 months would have been higher than the progress that you're going to get by blasting, for 4 months. Maybe blasting for 4 months will get you close, to what that long-term would have been in 12 months. But there's going to be a decline.
Sure. I think another way of doing it, I'd like both your thoughts on this actually. Either as a coach, or if you're a lifter who's maybe doing their own training, I think a cool experiment is like designing like a skeleton program, where it's like, if you had 3 sessions a week and you could do 2 or maybe 3 lifts in each session, what would they be? And like, write that as a program. And now that becomes your minimum, perhaps, the days when you've only got an hour or whatever, there's your program. And then the days when you get more time, that's when you can start adding in the accessory work or whatever. But I think, for you, maybe this would be an interesting one for you guys. What would your skeleton lifts be? Like, what would be in there if you could only maybe do 2 exercises per session?
Oh, it'd be lower body split squats, Bulgarian split squats. They hit, I feel like, everything from the posterior chain to the quads, adductors. So that for me is the best bang for my buck without getting the back issues. And that would be the go-to. And then I'd say probably glute ham raises or like a hamstring curl. And it'd be different. Like if I had a healthy back, deadlifts would for sure be in there. It'd be probably deadlifts and split squats. Those would be the go-to. But now it looks a little different. It'd be Bulgarian split squats and hamstring curls probably, or glute ham raises. And then for upper body, I'd always have bench. I just love it. And it's to me, it gives the best bang for your buck from a strength standpoint and hypertrophy. And then I would have dips as my number one accessory. That's going to be like my main indicator lift for bench. And then I've also grown quite fond of like banded push-ups, because the amount of chest, the degree to which I feel them in my chest is immense. So those are kind of my big 3 for the upper body right now. But everybody's different. So what would yours be?
Well, on the weekend, my week's scheduled differently, so I have more time on the weekends. So the weekends is squat. It's always going to be squat, and then something that's going to supplement that squat, because I have a lot more time, and it takes time to get up to the weight that I'm going to use. Sunday would be the bench. I got a poverty bench, so it doesn't take that much time, but there's more volume that's on that. Then if it's during the week, it's more hypertrophy based. So I'm selecting whatever movement I can get to my working set soonest. You know, so if it's this morning, I did incline fucking dumbbell curls, which I hate to admit because it was biceps. I need like one set with the 10s, maybe one set of 5 with the 20s, and then 35s and 2 work sets. I'm done. It's quick. You know, I won't do a bench press. I'll do a machine press. One set of 20 with like 4 plates, and I'm pretty much ready to go with my work weight. Dave Tate here from Elite FTS to talk to you about bands. We've been a supplier of bands for almost 2 decades now. So I've known my way around the band landscape. When I'm talking about bands, I'm talking about floss bands, long bands, short bands, bands you can use for resistance training, mobility training, body weight training, and flossing. One of our most popular bands, or actually our most popular bands, are the long bands. The long bands are typically used the most with squats, bench presses. Our floss bands are bands that you wrap around the joint to be able to help with mobility, circulation. And the short bands are designed for shorter range movements, bench press, deadlifts, and a lot of times people will use them with resistance machines to help accommodate the strength resistance curve. Head over to elitefts.com and look for bands in the toolbar or blowout menu. Done. You know, compare, now this is time constraint, right? Compare that to a bench press where I'm going to need to use the bar for 8 sets just to start to feel normal. You know, by the time I get the 8 sets done with the bar for a regular bench press, I got 3 other movements done, you know, because of that, because of the time. So, but that's more hypertrophy based. So all I'm worried about then is, am I stimulating the muscle? Am I getting the effective reps and all the shit that you're supposed to get that are in there? Done. And it doesn't take that long because I'm not training for the meet, you know, or anything like that. But even if I was, you know, if I was to train for a meet or whatever it was, and it was set up the same way, I would still select the movements exactly that same way, but they're not going to be curls and shit like that. It might be the glute ham raise because I know, I can get to my work sets like that. 1, maybe 2 warm-up sets right in there compared to stiff leg deadlift or an RDL. Now I need fucking 20 minutes just to warm up the movement pattern to be able to do that. So it's a trade-off.
True. Do you think, sorry, go on.
No, that's a spot on point. That's another thing you got to look at with coaching. Because if a lifter's deadlifting 700 pounds, it's going to take a while to work up to that weight. So you have to look at their degree of strength. How long is it going to take to work up to these weights? So when I'm picking exercises on a given day, I have to take that into account as well. My strongest guys, like between having to do mobility before squats and then work up to the heavy squats and all that, the amount of time that's going to take, the amount that's going to take out of their CNS, they're not going to be able to do as much afterward. It'd make for a marathon session. Whereas someone who's working up to a 300-pound squat, it's not going to take as long. So that's 100% something you also have to look at and take into account.
No, I mean, I was very similar point, but you know what you're mentioning about the warm-ups there, I think it's different if you're a powerlifter, right? There's certain lifts you obviously have to do, but for everyone else, there's no lift that you must do, right? So, you know, if back squat takes you 40 minutes to warm up for, maybe it's just not the lift for you. You know, maybe it's a Zercher squat or a Bulgarian split squat, and not even just from a time perspective, but, you know, I would think if a lifter is telling me I need to do all of this stuff just to be able to squat 200 pounds or whatever on a bar, that's probably means we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole or wherever. Whereas if, you know, this lift over here, you guys can warm up in 2 sets and be ready to go. I'm like, okay, maybe that's telling us something.
I need no warm-ups for a fucking loaded carry.
Exactly.
So that's like simple low-hanging fruit. Like, done. You know, now that's not the shit I'm going to want to do on the weekend when I have more time, you know, because I will need those warm-up sets. But the other point to what you're saying, if they're pulling 700 pounds or pulling 800 pounds, they're also accumulating a certain degree of workload, just getting to that weight.
Yeah.
You know, so that has to be kind of accommodated for too, as well, because that will play into when you get to the elite level strength lifters, the total tonnage that they're lifting before their work sets is done is a lot. And then people will say, dude, you only do 2 movements. Like, yeah, but
yes.
you know, when you add this all up, you know, this is 15,000 pounds of workload, and that has to be taken into consideration the stronger somebody gets. And inversely considered, if they're not that strong, because the beginner may look at that and say, well, he just squats and does glute ham raises and he's done. Well, there's a 20,000 pounds of workload accumulated, where with your weights, it's 750 pounds. Not saying that they need that 15,000 pounds, whatever it is, because they're not accommodated to that, but that gets lost in the translation of just looking at somebody's sets and reps and using that as a guide on to how they should move forward.
True. I've got written down here your 2025 goals. And I think you need to get better at goal setting, because as far as I can see, three of the 5 already done, and we're in May. But you had in there a 20-minute 5K, so that's already done. What time did you get there, out of curiosity?
That was 1936. It was like a week before the marathon, so I hit PRs in the shorter distances right beforehand, and that's a really good litmus test of your speed in the longer distances.
Sure. Awesome. And then you got 1 hour 34 half marathon, which you did in Knoxville. Is that right?
So in training, I my goal, basically my best half marathon was 1:38:38, which was that was November of 2023. So I just wanted to get under an hour and 34 minutes. And in training for this marathon, I did 1 hour 30 minutes and like 57 seconds. Nice. So it was a pretty big improvement.
Sure. And then you also finished the Bible, which you said you've now done.
Yes, sir. Yeah, trying to get back into the word.
The 2 that are left unticked are both lifting related, right? So we've got on here a 365 bench.
Yep.
And 475 for 20 on deadlift. So what's the game plan for attacking? So obviously now you've got 2 lifting related goals left. The running related ones seem to be ticked off. So what's the strategy right now?
Yeah, this was an interesting thing. So it was back in, I want to say like November. I did 20 dead stop reps at 441 on deadlift. That was the most I've done for 20. Like that was pretty cool, because I've seen Johnny Candido did 20 reps with 501, and he did that. I don't remember. It was like a year ago, and I was like, I wanted to build up to. So I thought, okay, we could maybe throw 33 more pounds on over the course of a year. And that was at a time where I could still kind of deadlift a lot of times. In the back, we would have its periods where it was flared up, and then other times it wasn't so much. And I'd be able to have a couple months without issue. And now I'm questioning that, because it really is, it's almost like being as lean as I am now, and with how it doesn't like to cooperate, the deadlift goal might have to be reevaluated. I just don't even know how much it's going to be in the cards to push deadlift at this point, especially if I stay at this lighter weight. The bench goal was just simply tacking on 11 pounds to what I hit last year. And the thing with that was I knew I was going to be running still. So it's not like I'm saying I want to put 35 pounds on my bench, because it's like, well, it's probably not going to happen with this amount of mileage, but maybe we could get 11. And I still think there's a shot at that. I definitely want to stay around like 205 and not get much above that. Whereas I hit the 353 at 217. So that's going to be an uphill battle, but bench is going smoothly and I never get pain from it. And it's one of those things I can get done very efficiently, very quickly. So as far as those go, it's looking like the deadlift one might be off the table with the back issues. And I've since kind of pivoted that to where I'm like, I just want to be repping 300 pounds on split squats, which the most I did back in the days on PEDs was 405 for 5. And I was doing 315 for like sets of 8 or 10, no problem, rather easily. So it'd be cool to get back to 300, and that's a lift that agrees with my body. But the bench one, we'll have a shot. We'll have a shot at that. It'll be close. The deadlift one, I just don't see it in the cards right now with how things have been. And I'm accepting that. I'm at peace with it.
No, but that.
We got 7 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you lay these goals out, do you lay them out as stretch goals? So something that it's going to take, the right periodization and a longer time to hit?
Yes. Hands down. These were written out in the end of December. And I try to make them attainable, because I used to set, and everybody's guilty of this. Guys come to me, before they're getting coaching, they'll be like, I'm benching 275 and I want a 405 bench. And I'm like, whoa. Like, you got to slow it way down. Like, let's get 300 done and we'll go from there. So I used to be guilty of that myself, where it's like, I'm running, let's say now I'm at a 1935K and I want to get 17. It's like, no, that's light years away. It's the difference from a 700 deadlift to an 800 deadlift. It's like, slow it down. So I try to make them stretch goals, but attainable.
I do exactly the same thing. And the way that I'll do it is I want to achieve that. And I've also had times where I've hit them within the first quarter, which kind of fucks with you a little bit, because you're like, it should have taken longer than this, but you don't want to feel bad about it, but it still kind of does. But I want to hit them in like Q4. But the cool thing about it is I can move it, right? Where when you had a powerlifting meet, or I guess in your place, if it's a race that it's this exact race, that's where I found I get myself in trouble, because that date's coming. I'm a little fucked up, but I have to do it on this date. So then I just get more fucked up, where because I can slide it, it's like, oh, I'm a little fucked up. Let's back it off. Instead of October, it's November. Well, it can't be late November because I'm really busy then, then you gotta, so it makes you have to reframe how you lay everything out. But the cool thing is you can, like the deadlift, right? You think that now, but you have until the end of the year, right? So that can slide. Now it sucks because it didn't happen when all the other ones did, and you could just coast through the rest of the year. Like, I hit all the shit I wanted to do for this year. But that's why you set these things, so you have to really think about how they're going to be accomplished.
That's true.
Now, this might be a terrible question, so I apologize, but I was curious. Like, to me, this is a cool set of goals, quite varied, and, represents you quite well now, I feel. So what would, 26, 27-year-old Pete Rubish say, looking at those 5 goals there as a spread? Like, what would he say hey, do you know in 6 years from now, these are going to be your annual goals? What do you think his response would be? And maybe what would you say back to him as a retort?
Before you answer, I'm going to say the same him is still there. Okay. Because you got all these in the first, it's March, it's just May. It's May, so instead of reading the Bible, it could have been stretched out for the whole year, but no, you're going to get it done. You see who I'm saying?
Yes.
So the same person is still there, as proven by that.
Sure.
And in a sense, the running ones are a little misleading, because there's a window with running where you can hit PRs. And once it gets hot, it's not going to happen. Like there's there's no races even between May and October. There's no races because no one's going to do well. You're not going to hit PRs when it's humid and hot. It just kills your times. So the window is basically, you have October until April, maybe in some places end of April. And that's when any distance PRs, any races are going to be. So it's like all the work's been put in the back half of the year.
I get it.
For the front half. And then I know, like, now I'm not going to hit any PRs. It's way too hot. It's impossible. Yeah. Everything suffers. So that's kind of how it is with running. But I agree. There's definitely still that mindset where it's like, let's knock it out. But to answer your question, truthfully, I think I would have been like, what in the actual heck kind of thing? I would have been like, you got to be kidding me right now. I couldn't have foreseen where I'm at now, even 3-4 years ago when I was coming off the PEDs. Like you never know what's coming ahead of you. You never know what the plan's going to be, what the Lord's going to have in mind for you. And that's the crazy thing. Like, even now, if I try to plan ahead, it's like it could all change so drastically, so dramatically. I don't know, but I've gotten better about like actually making the goals somewhat attainable, because I used to fail every single one I'd write down because they were so ambitious. And it was that same mindset where it's like, let's take Trent after 5 months being on PEDs kind of thing. You shoot for the moon and then you'd miss on all of them.
True. So you mentioned obviously that those goals kind of sum up quite a reinvention, transformation, or whatever of your life in general. But you've mentioned, I noticed on several of your Instagram posts, how you kind of openly admit that in your 20s, your life was a bit of a mess. And I think I'm taking that almost as a direct quote from you there. So what, obviously we can see the running, the physical changes and all that type of thing, but what else has changed, whether it's your mentality, your lifestyle with your family, what else has changed in Pete's Rubish life kind of over that 4 or 5 year period that's led to the person that's here right now?
I think I've just been humbled in a lot of ways, where things haven't turned out how I wanted them to or how I planned. The setbacks that have come up, seeing health issues, even if they're just something like a kidney stone, or seeing people pass away, and all these things lead to a culmination effect where you realize this is a finite journey. It's going to end, and you can't take it all with you. And it's just really changed my outlook on life in general. I'm much more appreciative of smaller things, of the things I have now, as opposed to desiring more and more. And the big part of that is obviously growing closer to the Lord. Like I try not to be apologetic about it. Like I feel like He's given me second chances in life. And that's where I point back to like the angiogram thing. It makes no sense. I can't get any doctors to be able to explain it because no one has an explanation for it. The outcome of that and like what I've done with my life.
You mentioned it, right? So I've got the results listed here. You had 0 calcifications or uncalcified plaque, no structural issues, no enlargement. That's rather good, should we say, especially considering your background.
Yeah, do you guys know Kyle Gillette, Dr. Kyle Gillette? He was Derek's main doctor at Merrick for a while.
Sure.
He went out on his own, and he approached me a couple years ago. He's like, you should get a Clearly done, a Clearly scan, which is an AI interpretation of an angiogram. So you get the angiogram, you do all the normal stuff, and then it like is interpreted. And the big thing with that is with an angiogram, you can see the non-calcified plaque, which is honestly what kills most people. The calcified is almost the body is starting to heal itself of the plaque and harden it. So it's not as likely to cause an issue, whereas uncalcified plaque breaks loose, causes a heart attack, lodges downstream, that causes the heart attack. So the uncalcified plaque, it doesn't show up on a normal like CAC score, which is what a lot of people have done. And I had that done even when I was 26 after Dallas McCarver passed. And at the time it was like a 2, so there was a little bit of plaque. And I thought that was good, but they're like, you're not supposed to have any at that point. So I had this done last July. Went in, you take a beta blocker, you take nitroglycerin to enlarge the heart, or to like dilate it, I should say. You get the scans done. And I was thinking for sure there's going to be, it's not going to be great given the history of what I did. 10 years of unmitigated sleep apnea, high blood pressure, out of control cholesterol, never coming off anything, using Tren for a 3-year stretch on end, and other occasions as well. So I'm like, all right, there's for sure going to be something. And it came back and there was like absolutely nothing, not even, and a lot of people, there are people who have no calcified plaque, but they have like uncalcified. And Dr. Gillette is like, I've seen 50 of these. I've never seen a single male with a completely clear one. He's like, I've seen 2 females with a clear one, but women are much less prone to heart disease. He's like, I've never seen this in a male. I've seen 50 of these. And, he's like, I don't really have an explanation. Like, it makes no sense given what you've done and everything. And I agreed. And it was just very humbling. Like they do autopsies on people who have murdered or they're murdered or whatever. And they're 20 years old and they have plaque. Like everybody's got plaque. It's a thing. So I didn't know how to take it. And I just was like, felt like it was like a second chance, the man above, the Lord looking out for me and taking care of me in that way and giving me a second chance at life, because I didn't deserve that. I should have had a lot of stuff going on in there. There should have been stuff that was off. And even Dr. Gillette, he's like, your aorta must be made of steel, because given the powerlifting and all that, it's more common to have a little bit of like an aortic dissection or the start of that. And there's no issues here. There's no structural issues or anything. So it was just very... That was a big thing. I thought I was headed for sure towards like a heart attack or something. Like I have very high lipoprotein little a. My levels are 260. Whereas in most people, they're less than 50. They're closer to like 10. I'm at 260. I'm like highest lipoprotein little a levels, which predisposes you to supposedly like a 5-time greater risk of a heart attack. And then this comes out and I'm like, this makes no sense. I've had my LDL my whole life in a high category. Even now it's 127, 128. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense. None of this adds up. And that was one of those things where it's like, it just humbles you. You're like grateful, but I don't know. It's just, I had so many feelings after all of this.
You can tell you're still kind of processing a little bit now almost.
Yeah. And I've never gotten anyone to be able to explain it. Like they can't make sense of any of it. So that's one of those things that does change you in a sense. I don't deserve it. I look back and I'm like, why didn't I continue down the road or pass away like so many people I've seen around me or anything like that? Like why them? Why, all that sort of stuff. So it's a lot to deal with. I had buddies who are not here anymore. And I'm sure Dave does too. It's just, I don't know.
So with that shift in perspective, you mention a lot on your posts and things like that about how now your focus is on training and everything working together for like your health being in a good place, your blood being in a good place. So the term health obviously means something very different to you now than what it did in your 20s. And I'm sure you guys can say like maybe health then was basically just being healthy enough that you could take enough tren or not pass out during your lifts or whatever. Like, how does your perspective, what does the term maybe health mean to you now compared to when you're deadlifting 900, for example?
Yeah, I think it means just quality of life for as long as possible, which I know like Peter Attia, he talks about that, like the instead of how old you're going to live, how long can you live without having major illnesses or being, being able to move and all that kind of stuff and be able to be independent. That's kind of, so lifespan versus, I forget what he calls it. That's kind of what I want to do now. I want to be relatively healthy, and not obviously all this stuff isn't necessarily healthy. Like there's a middle ground. I eat a lot of baked goods. I don't eat perfectly. My diet's not perfect. Running ultra marathon distance isn't healthy. Running in itself, it has helped my biomarkers a lot. And I think overall it's healthy, but it can get to an extreme where it's not healthy. Like I don't think running 100 miles anyway and seeing all the kidney damage afterward and is healthy. But I try to find more of a middle ground now. And I do get the blood work and I've done the scans and all this stuff. And I've seen like my fasted insulin was 1.5. It was just as low as possible. And all the kidney functions were very good because obviously you're stressing your kidneys a lot with the running and being dehydrated. And so I'm making sure all this stuff is in check. But even like my lipids aren't perfect. My HDL, it got very high. That's another thing running's done. It's gotten it to like 73 as a baseline, which is quite high. Triglycerides are like 58. But the LDL right now, 127. And that's from eating, baked goods and stuff. So I still am trying to be a lot healthier than I used to be, but I still want to enjoy life a bit. And my vice is really food in a sense. Like that's my vice. I don't really struggle with other things as far as addiction or anything, but there is a little bit of addiction going on with my relationship with food. Like being straight up. It sounds funny, but that's my weakness.
Sure. I mean, everyone has one, right? But in a way, and this question might sound screwed up to some, so I apologize, but do you almost feel lucky that you had some of the health scares and the back pain and stuff like that? Because at 32, 33, you've reevaluated these things to a long-term perspective for what most would say is very early in your life. In your early 30s to be thinking like that is not that common. So in a way, you're almost thankful that those negative things happened because it made you had that perspective shift quite early in your life, and maybe now you can gain the benefit of it for longer.
Yes, I think that is definitely part of it. I think that's played a role. Maybe if I hadn't redlined and pushed as hard as I did with certain things, PEDs and training and all of that, I'm sure I wouldn't be as acutely aware of where things are at now. So I think that's 100% played a role. it's something I'm always interested in health. I'm always interested in improving it, but I'm definitely not perfect. And I just, I'm not like doing everything perfectly right. So I think you have to find a balance in life of doing things that even if they're slightly destructive and you enjoy them, you can have some of that. You can't just live like a monk either. And that's a big part of it. Like, it's not to say you go 100 miles an hour, but there's a balance.
Sure. So we mentioned your 2025 goals there with your running and your lifting. Do you have any like health or blood work related goals, like anything specific there, or is it just everything trending in the right direction over time?
I've gotten it checked so many times now since I came off that the actual changes are so little that it's almost like I'm at a point where I don't have to check it as much. And I just did check some things. I'll periodically want to check in on things, but I know where it's going to be all the time. Like, I'm not taking anything so it doesn't change. But I still periodically, like once a year, like to do a really thorough examination of the kidneys with cystatin C, creatinine, which is going to be on a CMP panel. And you'll get a estimated glomerular filtration rate from both of those. So the creatinine was like 1.0 on this last one, which is 101 GFR. And the cystatin C, I don't remember the exact number, but the GFR was 120. So cystatin C is just a little better for most guys because it takes into account muscle mass and it's not thrown off by muscle mass like creatinine. So I like to check both of those. You can do albumin to creatinine ratio in your urine, which is like a urinalysis. And that'll show if the kidneys are filtering too much protein and that's breaking down in your urine. That's another one I checked. That was like perfect. So I like to check that stuff just because the stress of running on the kidneys and all that. But, and to put that in perspective, I was getting like life insurance and they came and got my blood work at like 2 p.m. So it was after a 10-mile run. So they get the kidney function back to like, your creatinine is 1.9. You're in stage 2 failure. Like, we got to freaking out like they're going to charge me more. I'm like, wait, I did 10 miles. Let's redo this. I'll do it on my own. It's 1.0. Mm-hmm. So like the kidneys do take a bit of a hit temporarily and from dehydration and all that. That's why I like to stay on that. But I wouldn't say I necessarily have any like blood work goals at this point. It's just, I like to check the lipids a bit, ApoB, like periodically once a year or so. So there's, for the most part, I've checked what I've needed to check. The angiogram, I know how the heart's doing. There's not a lot left. It's all in a pretty good spot. I just need to keep it there. Mm-hmm. And I don't eat perfect. Like, I eat half the food's clean, half's not. And that's part of what I like about running. It somewhat justifies my ability to eat processed foods. Mm-hmm. Is that ideal? No. Do I know what it's doing as far as like, LDL and all that raises it 25 points or whatever? Sure. Mm-hmm. So there's a give and take. True. I still want to enjoy life to an extent. If my vice is eating donuts, then that's what it is right now.
Well, that was going to be my next question anyway. So if you were going to have a Dave Tate-esque, was it like a 12-hour cheat meal or something you had with Justin Harris where you just didn't stop eating?
Yeah, it was definitely probably 6 hours.
Okay, well, what would that look like for you then? Being the foodie that you are, what would be shoved into that window? Say you just finished your ultra marathon or whatever. What are you reaching for in that 6 hour time period?
After fluids.
Yeah, that's the big thing. You're right. Nothing I craved more than like mellow yellow after running. But no, it'd be donuts all the way, apple fritters, mm-hmm. and then pizza obviously is a big one. Chips and queso is good, macaroni and cheese, that kind of stuff. So it's in some ways I would say I do struggle a little bit with that. Like, I don't know if you struggle with food at all anymore. Mm-hmm. To either of you guys?
Yes.
Like, it's bad. You're not supposed to eat the Oreos. You're supposed to eat the strict diet. Mm-hmm. But that really is my vice. Like, I can truly say there's nothing else out there that I'm like, this is like a bad addiction I have and I'm struggling with it. Whether that would be like alcohol or lusting or anything like that. Like, those aren't problems for me. But like, food is like, man,
I think if we were to look at this the same way we're looking at the page with margins, mm-hmm. You know, you don't want to forget that after a certain age, your body weight's probably the biggest factor that plays into all that. So the fact that you're 40 pounds lighter, 50 pounds lighter than what you were before is huge.
Yes.
You know, so as I've gotten older, it's been just chipping down little by little, more and more and more, because being over 50 years old and 280 pounds is a big fucking problem, even if it's all muscle. And if it's not, people get pissed every time somebody says this, with the facts are the facts, you know, and that's kind of what plays out into all that. So being lighter is also probably the bigger catalyst that allows you to be able to get away with a lot of that shit.
Yeah. And it's not fun to like have sleep apnea and stuff. I had it for so long. I'm like, do you know how nice it is to be able to wake up now and I'm not exhausted all day?
Never had a CPAP?
Gosh, I should have. I needed one. No, I had it done. I had the sleep study done when I was 19, and they're like, yeah, you have bad sleep apnea. This is before PEDs, like just from lifting. And so I can only imagine how bad it was that whole period when I was 250, 260. And I couldn't do it. I'd rip it off and freak out. And I tried all the different masks, and I never stuck with it long enough to give it a fair shot. That's true. So I never had a CPAP. For 10 years, I had sleep apnea that was horrendous. I'm sure my resting heart rate was like 100. A blood pressure, who only knows? Like lipids, same thing. All that was out of control. And I'd sleep for like 9 hours, wake up exhausted, have to go take another nap, still exhausted all day long, and just smash a ton of pre-workout to get through the training. And it's like, now I can sleep 6 hours and I feel great. Yeah, I still have energy drinks and such, but it's like, oh, that's the hardest. That's the biggest reason. The biggest thing that keeps me at this lighter weight is that the sleep. Like, I'm like, I sleep so much better. That's the only reason. I'd probably try to get up to like 230 again if it wasn't for that. But even that, I've noticed like a big difference coming down here. And you're not as strong. So it's like there's give and take.
Do you notice that, you've mentioned how your body weight fluctuates, your body weight is almost periodized like your training is, or when you're lifting is more priority, it creeps up and then you creep back down for your marathons or whatever. So even when you're creeping up to like 215 and 220, maybe where you're strongest right now, do any of those negatives start to kind of creep back in and remind you like, this is the path I could keep going on, but here are the repercussions already coming in?
100%. Like 225 and it starts going south, everything. That's when I'm like, I just feel the sleep apnea comes right back at 225. Even 220, I get much over that. I start to feel it. Blood pressure goes up. I'm like, great. Because right now, being on no meds, it stays 115 over 75, 80. But at 220, I need to take blood pressure meds. Even with running, like it just... So for a while, I was taking 2.5 milligrams of amlodipine, which from all the blood pressure meds I've tried, that's my favorite. That works the best bang for your buck. You can take a tiny dose of 2.5 milligrams of that. It's a calcium channel blocker, and that dented my blood pressure by far the most. And then you can do that in conjunction with like 5 milligrams of olmesartan, which is an ARB. And that got me down to like 105, 70, like consistently at 220, 225, not even running hardly, like 12 miles a week compared to now it's like 30 usually. And for the marathon, I got up to 83 miles a week. So that stuff helps a tremendous amount. But I've found like ARBs by themselves are not great. In conjunction with something else, they're really effective though. But yeah, it's like 225 is where I just start to feel it all get worse again. And then I'm like, oh, the sleep's going downhill and I got brain fog all day and I have to dial back.
True. And how tall are you? Like 6 foot, 6'1", something like that?
Yeah, 5'11" and 3/4.
Okay, so we'll round up, right? 6. So what I mean is, for most people, they hear 6 foot, 225. Like most people wouldn't say that's heavy, right? But even at that point, all those things are creeping in. And I know we mentioned this kind of off air, but for you now, how much of it is that? Do you feel that, when you're at 250 or 260, life is just a certain way and you get used to that is life? And now that you've experienced being down here at 200, you have that maybe changed perspective that you're like, oh, actually, I was actually dealing with all these things every day and just kind of palmed it off. I didn't even realize. How many other people do you find are probably kind of living in that scenario where they just blissfully ignorant almost to what those things are going on.
Well, there's a plus to add to that.
Sure.
When you're 260, you're frightened as hell that you would ever be 225.
Yes.
Right? Because you get to like
Oh,
250, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Right? So there's a mental part, of all that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I look back on how big I was, and oh man, it's like
It would be awesome if you could be that big again, but feel the way that you do. When
yes.
but you get used to it.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's like, yeah, if you could have the good but not the bad. It's just I was talking about this, like I have a bit of imposter syndrome where I look back on what I accomplished or the lifts I hit, how big I was, and it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like it's so long ago, 8 years or whatever, when I was at my peak as far as lifting, and I'm like, I can't even imagine now. I don't know what 800 pounds feels like in my hands. And I used to rep that for 5. It's like, it's just crazy.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching, make sure to take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe.
Now even 700 would feel like a lot. It's wild. It is that thing. Like if you're 260, 230 sounds small. Like you're like 230. That's the small guy. Like that's tiny. So it's all relative. It's what you're used to, what you've grown accustomed to.
It's called life. When you're 15, you can't imagine what it was like when you were 5.
No.
When you're 25, you can't imagine what it was like when you were 15 and still in high school and waiting to get your license.
Yes.
So why should that stop as you get older?
True.
It's all perspective. It's all about where we've come from and where we are now.
Well, it should be. Because if you're 25 and you're still acting like you're 15, there's a problem.
Yeah.
If you're 15 and you're acting like you're 5, it's a problem. If you're 35 and you're acting like you're 25, that's a problem. So that's growth.
Yes.
And a lot of people will get caught up and say things like you just said, I have this imposter syndrome, where you didn't have it when you were 15.
No.
You didn't have it when you were 25. So it's perspective.
Yeah.
I just think it must be interesting kind of being in the two camps like you are, like 6 foot and 225, 230, right? You say that to the demographic that train here, they could be like, that's a light dude. That's not a heavy dude.
It should be 270, man.
Right. And then I bet if you speak to your friends who are marathon runners, you say, I'm 6 foot and 230, they go, dude, like you need to shed some do you know what I mean? Like to them that's a heavy body weight, and I bet if you said to them, when I'm 230 I don't feel great, I get X, Y, and Z, all the marathon runners are going to go, yeah. Whereas if you say it to the other demographic, they're going to go, no way do you get those problems at 230.
And that's the weird thing, like 200 pounds to the running community is very heavy. And it blows my mind because I'm like, my buddies are like 170, 180, and it's crazy to me. So I don't know. It's all perspective. It's all who we're around and what we're used to. And so that plays a role, because I'm on the heavier side for like running, but it doesn't feel that way to me. It just, you get to a race or whatever and you realize that. And there's some jacked guys now, like you'll see it. There was another guy in the race and he was super jacked, and we kept dealing with the same cramping issues. And I think a lot of that was the muscle mass, like holding more muscle mass. You get to mile 23, 24, your hamstrings just start locking up on you. It's like, there's only so much you can do, but you see all different body types for sure.
True. And I just think it's interesting that like the demographics we fall into probably lead us to get blindsided by different things, right? So maybe to the powerlifters, being 250, 260, that's normal. You don't expect sleep apnea and all that stuff to sneak in at 230 or whatever. Whereas maybe in the running community, being 6 foot and 175 is really normal. But I'm sure there are downsides that come with that too, which to them probably they're amiss to, and they kind of brush off because that's just perspective is being changed by being in that group. So it must be interesting kind of being in the middle, where you can say maybe what gets brushed under the rug over here is really different to what gets brushed under the rug over there.
Well, yeah, it's like I said with ultra running, you can't tell me that's good for your kidneys. Your kidneys are getting smoked. I mean, they've shown like they have the same kind of kidney damage as like a heart attack victim after a 100-mile race.
Wow.
And some of that bounces back, but it's like you're on the other side of the coin as far as unhealthy. So anything can get taken to an extreme. That's why it's like the argument's always, a half marathon might be the optimal distance from a health perspective. You're not going so far to this extreme, but you're still getting that cardiovascular work in there. Even Dr. Gillette, they say like a 10K, 6 miles. So everything's different. You can take anything to an extreme, as I've done, and anything can become unhealthy.
I think it boils down to figuring out why you're doing it in the first place, right? And then because you can, as we talked about earlier, your identity can become whatever you're doing, which that's an identity. That's not you. That's kind of separate, so figuring out what you want, or why you're doing it is the key. And why you're doing it may not be because you want the challenge of this 100-mile race or the challenge of this marathon or the 5K or whatever it is. And once you figure that out, it doesn't matter what the distance is or what you're doing. Yeah. It's, having something that's a goal that you have to be able to work for, that challenges you to be able to fill that gap, that's in there, because that's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. And do you guys struggle at all anymore with lifting far less than you did in the past?
Fuck yes. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, yes.
Every day, right? Do you get in your head a little bit? You're like, man,
Well, on some lifts, I just gave up. It's like, this isn't poverty land. Fuck it. I don't care. But yeah, I mean, it's there. It's less, but I'm fucking 57.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's more a matter of what I can do relative to my body weight has been the shift that I've made there. Right. Because if I can squat 3 times my body weight, right, then that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I can be cool with that. But to be able to do that when I run the math, it's like, oh, okay. 225 is way different than 260 or 250. So how do and for a long time it was whatever the lift was that I would be testing. I just want to hit that same lift each year, but 10 pounds lighter.
Okay.
So then I had to pivot that because I became too light for that to actually become, more unhealthy than it needed to be, because it's still going to be unhealthy. Like any of the shit that we're doing is probably not the best thing for our health.
Yes.
Even if it's running a marathon.
Yes.
So I think we learned to mitigate, how much cost do I want to have with that? Okay, well, if I can do this based upon my body weight, then it forces me to go down low, more again. But this is the outcome, and it's not going to be easy. And that's what I look for. Is what's not going to be easy. That's going to take a long time to be able to do it, and I might not. And that's what I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And having that thing I don't like balances the rest of the shit out, because I can control that. It may not happen. It will piss me off. Same way it would piss you off when you missed any main lift.
Yeah.
It will piss me off, and I don't like that. So that's enough of the drive right there. Because last year what I wanted to do, I didn't do, and it still pisses me off. Right. So There's 2 choices. I can either try to do that again, and I know what I would have to do to be able to do it. And that's no red flag, because I don't want to die, trying to do it. Now, if I die doing it, I'd be happy as fuck. I'd rather die that way than any other way. But so it's mitigating, but figuring out, I know why. The why I want to do it is I need that challenge. It's not going to be easy. That's going to take time that I need to really think about and have to kind of plan how that is. And the realistic chance that it's going to happen, it's high. I can control the variables to make that happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's probably because I didn't control some of those variables very well. And that's on me. Right? Business-wise, like I said, there's a lot of other variables that you really can't control, so that's not, if I make that all on me, then I'm going to be a problem, because when that becomes that identity and so much of it isn't on you, and then you have to manage all that stress of that, you're not going to do well.
True. I mean, for me, I think it was, I just started doing different lifts. I was just like, cool.
Well, that was a big thing
Yeah.
too.
You know, like I don't compete or whatever. I can do what I want. And, you know, for me, I like being the body weight, the body fat, whatever I am now. What stuff I can still perform well on. For me, it's like weighted dips, weighted chin-ups, power snatches, high pulls. Zercher squat was the one squat that I never really pushed hard. So my barrier for that is lower. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll push that. And so that was a big part of it, just changing the goalposts entirely so there's almost no comparison. And I think for me, what I realized was like, I just liked training to be challenging. So as long as like I've got a goal, which are these new lifts that, you know, they could arbitrarily be anything, that I think they're just conducive to my current structure. But then really the thing was like, I want training that's challenging. I want training that spikes my adrenaline, makes me feel a certain way. And as long as the training is creeping towards that arbitrary goal, but gives me that in the here and now, the rest is almost irrelevant. So like, that's why all my training is strength circuits. Like it's all that stuff done in circuits because that does it for me. I've started wearing mouth tape when I train because that's just a cool new challenge. You know, like now I have to do it all with nasal breathing. And the quote I always give people is the Dark Knight film, which is probably one of my favorite ever films, when Batman's talking to the Joker and he's kind of like, why do you do this stuff? And he's like, I'm just a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I ever got a car, right? And I'm blissful. That one just resonated with me, right? So it's like I'm blissfully aware of that now. So I'm like, cool. Those goals are just floating out in the ether, and I probably wouldn't actually know what to do if I got there. But the process of creeping towards it just has to tick certain boxes for me. Mm-hmm. As long as it does that, I'll just commit to it forever.
What you said is a good point, because that's what I did after I stopped competing was, you know, there's this stupid bodybuilding type of phase where whatever that was. But when I started training more for strength, it was avoid any of the movements that I knew how strong I used to be on. Like only do variations of that movement that I don't even know if it's good. Right. And the only time when you asked if it still bothers me, the only time it still bothers me if it is some bench variation. And that's because I know what I used to be able to do. You know, so if I'm benching a weight and I get it for like 6 and I used to be able to do it for like 50, that is a problem. You know, that's the problem. Or I try to avoid a lot of all that, but we kind of got a crew and, you know, we do the same things. And what bothers me more is if I do a weight and they're all like, hey, great job. And it's like, man, that was fucking 265 pounds, man. You know, I used to do 510 on that. You know, this sucks. Like, don't tell me good job on fucking this. You know, this is just terrible. But if I didn't have those other people that were doing those things, I probably wouldn't even do the movements at all. Yeah, I would do other things because I don't know if it's good or bad. And I hope somebody doesn't come in right behind me, you know, and like do what I just did for a single for 10. Oh, yeah. Something like that. But
well, no, that's how deadlift is for me. I'm like, I know what I did. This sucks now. Like, this is bad. And it reminds me in the ultra, I was like 55 miles in. The 50 miler people had just started. They were like 8 miles in. They're passing you. Like, you're having to keep getting off the trail to let them pass. It sucks. And they're always like, great job. You're doing amazing. And they all keep saying it. And you know you're dying. You know you're miserable and you're doing terrible and you're it's not going well. You're like, stop telling me this. Like, it's very annoying. Like, I know I'm not doing well. Stop telling me I'm doing well.
That's a weird thing, though, because
you so mad.
If they said, man, you suck, you know, then you'd be like, because in my same example, if they said, man, that's terrible, you know, I probably wouldn't like that either. So there's no good answer.
I was at the last like 8 station. It was like mile 60. And this guy, I was slumped over in a chair like this. And I heard some guy, he didn't say it to be rude or anything. He was telling one of the other people at manning the camp, he goes, that guy's not doing so well. And I'm like, thank you. Somebody shoot straight. Like, I know it. But it's like that with lifting where it's like, no, I've done way better than this. Don't tell me this is good. This is not good. And it's relative, but it's like deadlift is the lift that will always mess with me. It's what bench is to you. For me, it's like, I got to such a high level on it that now it's just, that's why I had to get into the 20 rep thing. I'm like, I've never done 20s because I couldn't have the cardio to do it. So it gave me something new where everything was a PR.
Yeah.
Just like you guys said. It's instead of trying to do a 1 rep max, which is going to be 200 pounds less than I've done, let's do 20. So you have to get creative in that sense. But it's interesting that all of our goals still, they all come to this realization where it's like we are somewhat making them to where we're being healthier.
Yeah.
Like we're lighter now, and we're shifting to where the goal ties into a slightly healthier lifestyle.
True. I mean, I'd feel if I was defining myself, I'd just say I'm less stupid than I was. I wouldn't say I'm being smart, because like one of the lifts I put into my training was weighted push-ups. And then literally within like a week of doing them, like you feel them out and you're like, I can do these can work. I looked at what the world record is for what is the heaviest single push-up, which by the way, there isn't one. There's a 1 rep max handstand push-up, which is like 350 pounds or something insane. But I couldn't find a world record for the heaviest single repetition push-up, which was interesting. But that was still my first thought, was like, where's the upper ceiling for this?
Yeah.
What has someone, like, even though I'm doing it for different reasons and it's this new thing that I've just tried, the first thought is, what's the best anyone's ever done? So the mindset is still the same, really. It's just being applied to what we hope is a slightly more conducive goal in the long term.
Good point. Absolutely.
Well, I think you've already beat the biggest obstacle that I've seen, and that's with the PEDs, right? Because that pull's always there. You can't tell me it's still not there, right? When you have that shitty deadlift thing, you say, well, I can just fucking pound the tread. It's still, that will never go. It's like almost like an addiction. It will never go away, you know, but you've been able to beat back that beast enough that I don't think that voice is as loud as it is with a lot of others.
Yeah, it's coming up on 5 years. So like if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. I think in a way, the back issues saved me from going back down that road. Because I'm like, even with PEDs, I'd be having this pain. So what's the point? If that wasn't there, and I'm like, I could take one cycle of tread and be back to 800, you never know. It'd be a lot harder to, I feel like, hold that off. So there is a good point with that, where it's like the realization that even with PEDs, I'm like, the back pain is a thing. So maybe that saved me in a sense. But also priorities in life. Like, I just know I'm not going to be a good person or the person I need to be towards my wife or my kid and those around me if I'm taking that. And it's more just that one steroid like we've talked about, but I don't want to go back down the rabbit hole of like that becoming such a priority as well. So the temptation, I don't feel it really anymore. Like I'm like, I don't care. My testosterone level's 400, whatever. Like I just don't care. But it was, and I felt so good since coming off. It's just made it relatively easy. I'm not anywhere near as strong, but I feel like it's a good spot.
You've got enough positive reinforcement that it's just
and
all the way.
I think the other thing, even if I was on TRT, I'd be a lot heavier. Like I would. I could hold a lot of muscle on TRT dose, like I can. So I also know then we bring back the weight issues and the sleep apnea. So it's like, it's kind of a give and take with that. It's like, I'm not going to have those and I'm going to be lighter and I'm going to have these lower test levels, but that's okay. Because it would put a lot of weight on me. I'd have a lot more muscle and I've done it. I've seen it. So that's the other side of the coin.
So with these goals checked off, what's next?
I think, like I said, I it's weird. I hated running at first, and now I really kind of enjoy it in a lot of ways. So I think one marathon a year will be kind of the middle ground. I don't think I need to get into ultra running again. It is way too time consuming. It gets into that detrimental phase on your family life and everything else and your priorities. So I like the marathon distance. It's good. I'll do probably another one maybe next March and try to go like 3:05. So cut 13 minutes off, place higher. This one, I was like 48th out of 733. So it was good. And just get a little better at that and chip away. But that'd be the main like running related thing. I like the distance. It's a good thing. And then lifting, if I honestly could just hold like, 350 bench in the off season. And when I'm running like a marathon, 315 even, I'd be perfectly happy to stay there. And then just keep the split squats going and like up around 300 pounds. So those are more like maintenance goals where it's going to take constant work to keep them in that place. But if I could hold there, I feel like my physique will still be pretty good, and it'll keep me, like the strength aspect of things, it'll keep that going because I still love strength.
You're still working with people online?
Oh yeah, all 12 years now, and just a little different clientele now in a way. Still some people are solely focused on powerlifting. That's still probably the majority, strength based. But been branching out with military guys more and things of that nature. So
what about the running community?
Yeah, I've had a couple. Who running is the bigger pursuit, and lifting's they still lift, but it's the side pursuit. It's to enhance the running.
Yeah.
So I've had a little bit of that, but I still most enjoy the straight up intermediates who come to me and want to get stronger, and they're very compliant and they're great clients. So that's kind of what I prefer.
How can they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Honestly, just drop me a DM on Instagram or something of that nature. I have an email, prstrength1@gmail.com. And that's how you can pretty much get a hold of me.
Any topics you wanted to talk about we didn't bring up?
No, I think we covered everything pretty thoroughly. I know that, most people are going to watch this and kind of know the story. So it's just been a journey of evolution, and I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going. Like, that never ends. So I want people to know that, like, it doesn't end. You don't know what's coming up next, and you're still trying to figure things out, and you're never going to have it figured out. And that's okay. And I definitely rely heavily on my faith in the Lord. Like, I feel like with the hard situation in the angiogram, that you get second chances in life in a lot of ways, and he'll make your path straight. So I would encourage everyone to try to gain a relationship with the Lord and read the Bible.
I want to thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks for helping, and we're done.
Thank you, guys.
All content you see on this channel and at elitefts.com is created by, take a guess, Elite FTS. If you want to help support the content, head over to elitefts.com and pick up literally anything that you need to be able to get more jacked and strong.